When my world mutated and handed out Star-Lord thrones, I grabbed a barren rock. I killed 156 civilizations on it before anything answered me. Then a system bound to me and started calling me host instead of gang biome. It called itself a plain and ordinary system, and it multiplied everything I earned tenfold. Divine Miracle became Divine Advent, and I dropped out of the sky in a column of gold onto a tribe that had waited 5 centuries for a god. The rock nobody wanted had won now. If this hook caught you, hit like and subscribe to lock in your spot for the next part. Both buttons matter, but every fortune begins in a small room. Let me show you mine. Yi Wu finishes draining a world's origin, and in the quiet afterward, a chime congratulates him on reaching the required rank and tells him to prepare for promotion. He stares out at the endless chaotic heavens a long moment before shaking himself loose. So it has finally come. Other people transmigrate, receive a system, and start climbing toward the peak of their lives. He transmigrated into a newly born system with no sentience in it at all, and woke up as the thing that does the handing. The trade came with inside information, which is the one consolation. A system spends origin points to travel the heavens freely, provided nothing goes wrong on the way. Systems have promotion ranks of their own, and there are millions of them out there rather than one. Past a certain rank, special rules apply, and the only one he has met is competition with other systems. The ugliest piece is the last, that a system meeting its own kind inside a single world must enslave it or kill and devour it on sight. By now he has plundered his way through more than a dozen worlds and crossed several of his kind. Early on, with his rank low, he stayed out of sight and swallowed every dispute rather than be noticed. As he grew stronger, he stopped stepping aside and began colliding with them deliberately. He has never worked out how time is counted in the heavens, since it runs differently in every world by grade, which he blames on the level of the world will. Some worlds he emptied in a few years, others held him for centuries. Out of all that he built a taxonomy of his own kind, 4 types: functional, auxiliary, rule-based, and other. He has never compared their raw strength properly, so he looks at his own panel instead. It names him the System Ye Wu, rank 9 and promotable, with his native function listed as plunder. Beneath that sit the 2 functions he took off other people, all things amplification at tenfold and alternate world summoning. His origin points are left off the readout entirely. Rule-based, he decides, because a function like his is frankly broken. Those 2 cost him a long stretch of planning, and 2 dead peers baited into worlds he had prepared as traps, and the harvest shortened his promotion road enormously. The chime returns to say his time is up and the teleportation has begun. One system of his own rank is known to be waiting in the destination world, and his promotion condition is to kill it. He settles his mood as an irresistible rule folds him out of the void. A vast disinterested voice announces that the target has been deployed and that the DZY-9527 assessment has begun. When his senses return, he is inside a world, and the first thing he does is frown. There is no world will hear. He pushes his awareness out in every direction and finds nothing looking back. And in his whole career, he has never met anything so absurd. Plunder is a smuggler's trade, built on taking things from under a world will's nose, so his kind knows that presence intimately. Normally, a system is suppressed the moment it crosses in, which is why they hunt for a native to parasitize and lie low inside him, a practice they call finding a host. Given this mission, the empty sky stops mattering almost at once. He will stick to the old trade, find a host, hide inside him, and make sure his opposite number never catches a trace of him. Whoever is exposed first has already lost half the fight. He turns himself into a streak of light and runs through the world's void with nothing pushing back at all, which in the past would have been unthinkable. In a certain star sector of that same world, a flat administrative voice is reading me my own obituary. A DZY-class civilization destroyed in the eternal winter. Civilization level, slave society. Duration of the creation run, 10,000 years. I watch the planet come apart and I do not flinch, because I have watched this collapse 156 times. My remaining creation points fund one more run, and nothing after it. Where does it keep going wrong? The first few attempts went fine, and then I stopped being able to push a civilization past the information age. I was allowed to be a failure back when I was an ordinary man with a badge and a desk. Being a failure in this era, with a god's tools in my hands, takes a special talent. The world used to be ordinary, and then it changed all at once, and every human alive could become a Star-Lord. A Star-Lord binds an ownerless planet and grows his own civilization on it, which is a polite way of saying he holds the abilities of a god of creation. I was in the first batch. Competition was vicious, and I was slow, so what I came away with was a barren rock with meager resources. My first civilization reached a feudal society before the resource ceiling caught up with them. When the calamity came down, they had nothing left to survive it and were scrubbed off the surface. The second time I reached the information age, so slowly that a Star-Lord in a neighboring star sector pinned my location while I worked. He had space navigation and he brought an army, and the gap between our civilizations was a cliff. I ran, hid for years, shook off the pursuit, and found another ownerless star sector. 154 creation runs since then, and not once have I touched my old peak. Even after the world handed me the keys to creation, trash is still trash. I laugh at myself, and out in the endless dark my eyes go hot without permission. The breakdown of a grown man happens in a single instant. Then something chimes politely inside my skull, announcing that a plain and ordinary system is binding to me. It asks me to wait while it climbs from 10% to 99 to 100, and then tells me the binding has succeeded. A system. I stand there turning the word over. Back when I was a corporate drone, the only rest I got was the half hour I stole to read novels, so I know exactly what that word does to a man's life. I shout for it in my heart loud enough to hurt, and the chime comes back to tell me the host is too excited and should calm down. Inside him, Ye-Wu takes stock of the man he has moved into, and concludes this one has not had an easy life. For an ordinary person to bind a system, hysteria is normal, since a system is another word for a cheat code, so now he has come to conquer, as he puts it to himself. I beg it not to leave me. With snot and tears on my face, I tell it I cannot live without it and that it has to save me. There is nothing dignified left to protect, since this stretch of years beat every scrap of pride out of me. Now that a system is actually bound to me, I will hold it with both hands and throw my face away. I want to reach the top with it, and I want once to get ahead and have somebody see it. Ye-Wu takes the display without comment, because geniuses are rare and a man born without money usually draws a hard destiny. Since he is here, that destiny is going to be rewritten by him. The rules also forbid a system from changing hosts partway, and he has no interest in learning what the punishment looks like. The chime tells me to state my request and promises this system will do its best to cultivate its host into the strongest man in this world. I tell it I believe in it, then lay my situation out and ask it what needs preparing. It asks me to wait while it analyzes the rules and the energy system of this world. So I wait. I have no ability worth counting. So from here I follow whatever it arranges, and however bad that goes, it beats the last 156 years. Ye-Wu goes through the world at full power and finds it effortless with no world will to shove him off. He intends to spend a large volume of origin points building his host a new planet, packed with resources. Let him develop its speed, and use that to deal with the other system here. He gets as far as reaching for the origin points before something immovable takes hold of him. The warning arrives with it, cold and administrative and nothing like his own voice. This is a special assessment. The system may not use large volumes of origin points to prop up its host, and every action must fall inside the rules. First, origin points reach a host only through a matching system mission, paid out after the host completes it. Second, the system may not directly resolve its host's crises, which includes killing his enemies for him. Killing a native is trivial for something that works through the power of rules. His kind avoids it during a plunder anyway, since doing it under the eyes of a world will announces your position. Once a world will locks on, the best case is being thrown out alive. Third, this assessment principally tests the application of system functions. That last line is the one Ye-Wu would most like to argue with. An assessment where only one system is permitted to survive, and this is how they run it. He cannot help suspecting the whole thing is a jar of scorpions with a lid on it, shaken until only the nastiest functions are still crawling. I call for it again 3 or 4 times and nothing comes back. The silence starts to feel like a verdict. Then it answers that it knows I am anxious, and asks me not to be anxious yet. And I let out a breath I have held since the binding. As long as it has not abandoned me, everything else is negotiable. Ye-Wu goes back to planning. He cannot fix the root of the problem, so the barren planet is what they have. The trouble is his host, who has not awakened to talent at all. When the world mutated, some new Star-Lords awakened talents, which let a Star-Lord develop a civilization at speed and come in strong and weak varieties. His host got nothing, which leaves very little room to operate. Then Ye-Wu looks at all things amplification and starts smiling. Amplifying a talent his host already holds could hardly be called breaking the rules. The rules also permit a beginner's gift package, exactly the kind of shortcut that pulls a host upward fast, and its quality scales with the origin points stuffed inside. What comes out is random. He can only pray his host's luck is less cursed than his life, and that at least one talent falls out. The chime tells me a beginner's gift package is still available, that it has been issued, and asks if I want it opened. I say open before the sentence finishes landing. Gold light spills out, and for one glorious second I think I have pulled something legendary. What I get is announced as a B-grade talent called Abundant Resources. Planets under the Star-Lord's command refresh some of their resources after a period of time, and the abundance is proportional to the planet's own starting resources. My face splits open anyway. It is not the divine thing I imagined for a second, but for a man whose rock has starved him through 156 runs. This is charcoal delivered in a blizzard. Watching from inside his host without a sound, Ye-Wu lets out a breath of his own. The gift package tops out around A grade, so a B grade means the man's luck is halfway decent, which means it is his turn. The chime comes back sharper, congratulating me on the B-grade talent abundant resources, and announcing that it has triggered the system function all things amplification. Then it tells me the B-grade talent has taken a tenfold amplification and evolved into the A-grade talent rich star. I do not understand a word of it since my system has not opened my panel yet, and I have no idea what functions the thing in my head even has. I go straight to the new effect instead. Rich star, A-grade, guarantees that every planet under my command will be a planet with abundant resources, and states that even a barren planet transforms quickly under it. I am taking off. The chime advises me not to get excited, since this is only the basics, and informs me that under this system's guidance all things and all stars can be stepped on. It heard me, of course, since it lives in my skull. I cough and tell it I could not hold it in, that I have suffered too long and this feels like passing the bar on my 9th try. It tells me to work hard, to say goodbye to my decadent past, and to slowly cultivate the heart of a strong man. Yi Wu has read the shape of this host's life by now, a standard specimen ground down by circumstance, who without an intervention like his would have suffered from the first day to the last. The A-grade talent lands and my planet starts changing under my hands, and the whole day still feels like a dream. The chime tells me the system panel has been opened and asks me to look. It names me the host gang biome, level 1 Star-Lord, my bound planet the Barren Star and flagged as transforming, my talent-rich star at A-grade, my subordinate civilizations none. Under system functions it lists plunder all things amplification at tenfold, and alternate world summoning, with my system points at 0. Then it closes on a system evaluation informing me that I am the worst host it has ever taken, and asking me to become stronger as soon as possible. My mouth twitches. It sounds exactly like my old teacher reading my marks to the class. To be fair to it, I really am useless, and hugging this thing's leg is the entire plan. There are only enough creation points for one final run, and for the first time in a long while I believe it will hold. I give the order to begin the creation run, and the Barren Star convulses and starts over. Seed of intelligent life next. I choose the human race partly because I was human first and I am sentimental about my species. The other reason is that I know humans well enough to catch their evolution turning down a wrong road. I input the seed, order atmospheric evolution and species richness evolution together, and wave a fortune in creation points off my ledger. The planet takes it and begins to change. Yiwu watches from the dark with real curiosity because none of the worlds he has passed through has been as strange as this one. The creation ability his host spends so casually would make him a creator anywhere else in the heavens, and here it makes him a small Star-Lord with an overdraft. That this world was ordinary until it suddenly was not keeps circling back to him. It is hard not to conclude that the rule force standing behind the systems came down and rewrote this place on purpose, building a special world to run its assessments inside. With every life seed invested, I watch the evolution like a man watching a pot, ready to step in the instant anything bends. Species evolution is unbelievably slow. A Star-Lord can spend creation points to accelerate the flow of time on his planet, and the cost is brutal even now, with no intelligent race and no established life on the surface. Once there is, the price climbs on a curve I do not want to think about. I grind my teeth and put a portion of what is left into acceleration anyway, with the period set at 100,000 years. The Barren Star goes into fast forward. Lightning walks through the new atmosphere, chemical reactions run on top of each other, and the sun and moon and stars wheel overhead. The life seeds sprout across a crust that will not stop moving. Plates migrate, and in the deep water the first species are born. Under the A-grade talent, the planet keeps transforming beneath all of it, rich seams surfacing across a rock that had nothing in it a day ago. Those resources will matter enormously later and mean nothing now, because a civilization at this level cannot pick them up. I am running the technology route, as always. It demands very few creation points, since the leaps come from the natives, and I am not the man to run research and development for anyone. What I can do is intervene at the enlightenment stage, get them into a social system early, and let them sprint. The fast forward stops and time settles back to its natural pace. Yi Wu watches from the dark and says nothing at all. 100,000 years was not enough, and I have nothing left for more. Every point burned on acceleration is a point missing from everything after, which would strangle the civilization before it starts. As the Star-Lord, I feel the whole surface at once, and I can feel that the human race has not been born. My future species is still a haze of single cells drifting in the deep ocean. The blessing has finished its work though, and the planet is no longer a barren rock in any honest sense. So I stop calling it the Barren Star and call it Earth Star, which is my name for it and not anybody's Earth. Gymnosperms and angiosperms, mosses and ferns and algae, seed plants and lichens and fungi have come up across it in tangled abundance. There will be no age of great reptiles down there, because I never invested those seeds. The chime cuts into my hesitation and recommends I accelerate the birth of the human race, solve the crisis in front of me, and think about the future afterward. It points out that civilization cannot evolve without an intelligent species to carry it, and that I should not lose the large thing chasing the small one. It startles me, because it is right, and because when my system tells me to do something, the correct move is to stop thinking and follow it in. So I go all in. It is only money, and money that is already half spent. I order the evolution accelerated until the human race is born and keep pouring creation points into the furnace without knowing whether they reach. Earth star heaves into an enormous evolution, and the speed of the images makes both of us dizzy. The ancient ages stage themselves, one after another, Archean into Proterozoic into Paleozoic, plates knitting together while algae and lower invertebrates fill the shallows. Life enters the Cambrian and detonates. The Paleozoic gives way to the Mesozoic, animals and plants breeding in enormous numbers, weather assembling into patterns, the whole system settling into cycles under a comfortable climate. Finally, the Mesozoic turns over into the Cenozoic. Mammals and flowering plants come into their prosperity, and the human race is born. I let out a breath I have held for geological ages. The creation points lasted exactly as far as they had to, and what remains of my reserve is embarrassing. This process burns money the way a furnace burns paper, and that is with no intelligent species on the surface. If I need to accelerate again, I simply cannot pay for it. Yiwu has been quietly furious about that for a while. He tried to issue his host a system mission for creating lifeforms, purely to funnel him the reward, and the rules refused to recognize it. In the last several worlds he passed through, he issued whatever missions he liked with whatever rewards he liked. Here it is restrictions stacked on restrictions, and whoever wrote them will hear from him one day. After a long search, he finds a mission the rules will accept. The chime announces a system mission with the objective of helping the human race achieve enlightenment quickly and establish a basic civilization system. The reward is 10,000 system points and one draw chance. I laugh, because I was already about to do exactly that. I ask what system points are for, and whether I can buy things with them, having read enough of these novels to know how the machinery works. It confirms that system points are the currency between us, and that buying items or using special functions costs them. Yi Wu answers that one straight, because the whole assessment sits inside the rules, and he cannot quietly inflate a reward. The comfort is that he is not paying. The points and the goods both come out of whoever stands behind the rules, and he knows that supply chain well, since it amounts to taking or trading from other worlds. I tell it I will finish the mission as fast as I can, which means going down there myself. A Star-Lord can fold himself into an ordinary body and walk into his own world, on the condition that none of his real power comes with him. Once he is inside the evolution, he steers it like any other man. I set another 100-year cycle, spend a little more on the time flow rate, and go down alone. The air holds plenty of oxygen, which is what a young biosphere should feel like. I am dressed as plainly as the world allows. I take a long look at the green piled up in every direction and start walking toward the human race's gathering place, which is close enough that their figures come into view before long. The chime reminds me that the human race is still in its beast era, and that approaching rashly will get me attacked. It pulls me back into the present, since I spent so long inside the last civilization that I half forgot mine had restarted. Their animal nature swamps whatever reason they have, if any, so a stranger walking into their ground is not a guest but an intruder. My body down here is mortal, and against people built like these I would not last a minute. So it is the old routine: stay near where they live without entering their territory, do nothing sudden, and wait until they stop reading me as a problem. That is not the same as being harmless, because a creature with no deterrence at all does not get left alone. It gets filed under food. I learned that in an earlier enlightenment, when I played it so gentle that they listed me as prey, and their god was simply killed and eaten. I went back up furious, wiped that civilization off the board, and started it over. They have noticed me. They stare at the strangely dressed thing on their horizon, and a good number roar to frighten me off. I ignore it and start building a hammock, since a house is beyond one man and I would rather sleep in a tree than on the ground. Food is the one problem I do not have, because a Star-Lord does not starve and does not need to eat. They cannot make sense of me, so they leave me alone and post a few watchers who never take their eyes off me. I finish the hammock before sundown, and while I work, more of them come in from the day's hunting. Then I light a fire, and the entire camp loses its mind. The one watching me widens his eyes and starts jumping and roaring and stabbing a finger at me, and the noise pulls the rest over at a run. They have not learned to drill wood for fire, so they eat everything raw and know flame only as the thing that eats forests. That gives me an idea I have never actually tried, so I gather my tools, pick up a torch, and walk toward them. Watching in the dark, Yi Wu works out the plan before his host has taken 3 steps, and settles in to see whether the man can pull it off. They fall back as I come, genuinely frightened of the burning stick in my hand. A man taller and heavier than the rest steps out in front of them, which is how I identify the chief. The others tuck in behind him and roar at me not to come closer. I understand that language perfectly and stop at about 10 meters, which is far enough that nobody's nerve breaks. Any nearer and they attack. God or no God. I plant the torch beside me, lay out the fire-making tools where they can see, and gesture for them to watch, with no idea whether gestures mean anything to them yet. Under all those eyes, I start drilling. The process takes at least half an hour, which does not trouble them in the slightest, because patience is the one thing these people have in abundance. Eventually a spark catches, and I lay the tinder on it and blow gently until the flame stands up on its own. I keep feeding it until the pile burns steady. Across the gap, every one of them is stunned silent, and then all of them are shouting at once. This is what knowledge looks like from the outside. My job here is done, and the rest belongs to them, especially since my standing around would keep their guard up. I toss the tools across and walk back to my camp. The chime tells me I did well not to approach rashly and notes their vigilance is still high. I answer that this is experience talking and that the lessons behind it were learned in blood. Fire terrifies them, and a stranger who can conjure it is a stranger they fear rather than eat, which is convenient for everything I want next. What I do not know is whether one demonstration is enough. Every previous enlightenment ran the long way, months of familiarity and then teaching hand over hand. These early people learn faster than any group I have raised though, and the stock I seated here should not be poor. After I leave, they creep forward and collect the tools I threw. The chief stands a while looking toward my camp with a thoughtful expression, while the little fire finishes its fuel and dies. Then he takes them all home. The whole group gathers in close. The chief sets my tools in front of him and starts copying my movements exactly, and the others stack every scrap of material I used at his side. Nobody speaks, and every eye in the camp is on his hands. Minute after minute goes by until a spark takes. He drops a pinch of tinder on it and blows, carefully for a man his size, and the flame stands straight up. He keeps feeding it tinder and dry wood until it steadies, and then the whole tribe is shouting and jumping on the spot. The chief grins, plainly pleased with himself. They are still afraid of the light, but the heat soaks into them on a cold night and gives them a comfort none of them has felt. After that first contact, their hostility drains away fast. They assign a group to follow me from morning until night, which is not surveillance anymore but apprenticeship, since one demonstration taught them that copying me pays. They see me walking upright and start doing it themselves, badly at first and then out of habit, though a body built for knuckles needs a long stretch of evolution before it walks properly. They see me put meat over the fire and imitate that too, without understanding why. The early attempts come out burned, and after enough failures they learn the heat and the timing, and then they abandon raw meat entirely. They copy my clothes as well, weaving broad, thick leaves together for lack of anything better. Somewhere in there I teach them weapons, hunting tools, fishing nets, and traps. 40 years go by. One morning a man walks into my territory, which has never happened once in all that time. I gesture to ask what is wrong, since he cannot speak and would not understand me anyway. He gestures at me and then at their camp until I understand I am being invited, so I get up and follow him. I set foot inside their territory for the first time. People stand respectfully along the way while one of them leads me to a simple house, and I notice how many houses there are now, since they copied mine. The man lying on the stone bed lifts his eyes when I come in, and his eyes are bright even though the rest of him is not. He is very old, with the smell of death settled into him, and after a moment I place him as the chief from that first night at the fire. Their lifespan is still cruelly short, 40-odd years and finished. He lifts a trembling hand and points at himself, then at me, then turns and looks toward the crowd at the doorway with everything he has left. There is no complete social system here yet, but under the plain fact of a death in the room, a little reason has come into them. I look at them and at the old man on the bed and understand what he is asking me to be, so I nod heavily, because they have trusted me this far. He forces a smile out of a face that can barely make one and holds a staff-like object out to me, and the moment my hand closes on it, his own hand drops. I speak in front of them for the first time. I tell them I will do everything I can for the development of the human race civilization, and that I am not only doing it for him. They cannot understand a syllable, and it does not matter. The old chief has fallen, a new chief stands in the room, and the age of enlightenment starts here. I bury him properly and begin teaching them with my own hands, and out of that the first crude shape of a society is born. In the days after I teach them simple numbers so they can tell quantities apart, and out of that comes a preliminary exchange system running on barter. I start primitive animal husbandry, small meat animals caught and penned and bred instead of hunted to nothing. Language I leave alone, because it has to grow out of the social system underneath it, so I build the system and let the words come later. 50 more years and I hand the chieftainship on. I tell whoever is standing nearest that it is up to them from here, in a voice too low to catch, and as the words finish this body's lifespan runs out with them. They carry me out and bury me beside the first chief with full solemnity. Space peels backward and I am out of Earthstar and back in the universe in my real body. I have done this many times and every death of old age leaves the same residue. I put the feeling down and take stock, because I have intervened personally before and it has never run this smoothly. The chime congratulates me on completing the mission and confirms the rewards are issued. which is a relief since I had no idea where the boundary for an initially established civilization sits. Along with the rewards the system mall opens, it tells me I may view the system mall and immediately advises me not to buy anything inside it. That advice is honest. None of the goods on those shelves are his, and none of the prices are his either. His own system mall is sealed shut for the whole of this assessment, so anything he wants has to be bought in a black market run by whoever wrote the rules. He has looked the stock over himself and finds it hard to describe politely. None of it helps a host at this stage, and 10,000 system points will not buy a corner of anything useful. I open the page anyway, because a man can window shop. A level 9 planet is listed at 1 billion system points. Creation point exchange runs at 10 system points to 1 creation point. Draw chances stacked by tier, a bronze draw at 10,000 points, and a silver at 100,000. Above those sit a gold at 1 million, a diamond at 10 million, and a god level draw at 100 million. Under all of it there are intelligent life forms for sale, and the list keeps going. I swallow. There is too much good in here and every price is a joke at my expense. My entire fortune is 10,000 points and I am standing in front of a burning building with a paper cup. Out of sight, out of mind. I close the mall and turn to the draw chance the mission gave me, which has to be worth 10,000 points on its own. And I tell my system to use it. It confirms the draw has been used and congratulates me on the B-grade talent intelligent race, whose effect greatly increases the probability of intelligent races being born within the civilization under my command. Then the second chime lands. The B-grade talent intelligent race has triggered all things amplification and taken a tenfold amplification. It has evolved into the A-grade talent civilization evolution, under which the development of my civilization is greatly accelerated and the time required for intelligent races to be born is cut to a tenth. Yi Wu raises an eyebrow in the dark, because his host cannot possibly have luck this good. He expected garbage since he knows better than anyone that the draw attached to that mission was the lowest bronze tier. Instead, the man pulled a B grade, and a B grade under his function stops being a B grade. That makes 2 A grade talents. It sounds modest until you remember that most Star Lords in this world never awaken to talent at all. Plenty who did sit below A grade, and S grade is rare enough to be a rumor. Civilization evolution binds, and a mysterious power settles over Earthstar. A Star Lord has exactly 3 ways to keep earning creation points. The first is developing his own civilization, which pays continuously as it grows and pays a lump every time the civilization's level leaps, with higher levels returning more. The second is war, taking creation points off other Star Lords. The third is trade. I do not get to talk about the second or the third, since trade carries real risk and anyone weak enough to be ambushed at the meeting point does not come home. As for plundering somebody, every Star Lord out there has been developing far longer than I have. I will catch them. The chime tells me to accelerate the evolution of my civilization as soon as possible, and promises that at a certain level the system will help me trigger a civilization leap. I say yes without asking questions. Before the civilization existed, acceleration was pure outflow with nothing coming back, and now that a society is standing the cost has climbed, but the feedback is real. So I stop hesitating and spend heavily, with one target, that Earthstar must develop far enough to build itself a language. The time flow rate jumps, and with a new talent behind it the civilization moves like a river breaking a dam. Its territory widens, the land changes shape, and across thousands of compressed years, the human race gives up walking on all fours for good. My early layout pays out as I hoped. Bartering saves them an enormous stretch of transition time. Tools and animal husbandry take the terror out of survival, and the population enters rapid reproduction. Fire carries them through every winter, so the weaker ones no longer simply die when the cold comes. Then the panels come down in a rising stack. The civilization has evolved rapidly and entered primitive civilization. Its development rate rated excellent, its civilization evolution excellent, its intelligent species birth excellent, and its overall evaluation excellent. A mysterious power descends while it speaks, and I am too startled to take proper note of it. Not one of those prompts appeared in any of my previous 156 runs, and a moment later a mountain of creation points drops into my account. Yi Wu goes still inside his host and watches the descending power without moving a hair. The next voice is colder, and it is not my system. It informs me that the civilization has entered preliminary development, that within 100 years of that civilization's own time flow a calamity will descend, and that the Star Lord should prepare. I stand there with my mouth open. Nobody ever told me there were scheduled calamities. Then the whole thing turns over in my head, because I have spent 156 runs being meticulous and watching disasters erupt anyway and eat everything I built. This is what was behind it. There was never a warning, so I was never prepared, and I call for my system the way a drowning man calls for anything. Yewu does not answer until that power has finished withdrawing, and he recognizes the flavor of it now. It is the power of rules, which means the mutation that turned this ordinary world into a Star-Lord's playground came from the same authority standing behind the systems. He wonders how many worlds have been converted into testing grounds like this one, because the scheme runs on a scale worth admiring. The cold voice adds one line before it goes, that civilization advancement brings down the calamity trial, that civilizations which pass also receive rewards, and that the calamity is therefore a filter. It makes sense of everything. I stop feeding creation points into acceleration and let Earth-Star's time settle back to its natural pace, because this time I have 100 years of warning instead of blindness. I ask my system what to do. I explain that I have met descending calamities before, and that every single time I dumped an enormous pile of creation points into weakening the difficulty before it landed. I cannot keep paying that bill. Resources are tight in the early stages, and every point spent blunting a disaster is a point missing from the development that follows. I have just come into a large amount and I still flinch, since the future will eat all of it, and lately I have been wishing I could split each point in half. Yiwu thinks it over and tries issuing a system mission, mostly to see what the rules tolerate. And this time it goes straight through. The chime announces a system mission with the objective of bringing the civilization through the calamity and surviving the calamity period. The reward is 100,000 system points and 1 silver draw chance. The number startles me, and the problem with beautiful rewards is always what you have to do to collect them. The chime adds that I can use system functions to get through this crisis, so I open my panel and go down the list. Plunder is obviously useless, and I would not know what to plunder if it were not. All Things Amplification keeps firing on my behalf, without my involvement. That leaves alternate world summoning, which I have never understood, so I ask. It explains that the function spends system points to summon people out of other worlds into the host's world. The stronger the person, the more it costs, and the higher the level of the world they are pulled from, the more it costs again. Yiwu has never used the function since he took it, having always considered it a dish not worth eating and not worth throwing away. In this world, though, he suspects it is about to earn its keep. I ask whether that means transmigrators, and it tells me I can understand it that way. My eyes light up, because I have just worked out what my system has been steering me toward. I tell it to get me a top student, then immediately add that a top student is not required, that a professor or a doctor or anything practical would do. Yiwu smiles at that, because it was his plan already, though he has sympathy for whoever gets picked. His host civilization is still primitive and its language is not finished incubating, and the man will walk into that with a modern education and nothing else. The chime quotes me 5,000 system points to open the world passage. I tell it to spend them without thinking twice, since surviving this calamity pays 100,000 in a silver draw. Yiwu does not argue. 5,000 is enough to open a door into a low-level world, and with more he would rather pull in a batch of players, whose ceiling would be set by this world's own upper limit. The balance in his host's account does not stretch to a batch, and at most it buys a few bodies. It is not stinginess that stops him handing over more, but the same rule restrictions, which leave him nothing beyond the 10,000 system points in his host's account. In another world entirely, a passage opens and Yiwu slips through it sideways, and the first thing he does on the other side is laugh. Alternate world summoning picks its destination at random, and out of every world in the heavens it has dropped him into, one he personally fleeced years ago. The local world will find him almost immediately, and a repulsive force rolls across him and starts trying to push the intruder back out. He tells it not to get so agitated, that he only came to borrow somebody and will leave when he has him. By then the world will has recognized the bandit who stripped it bare once before. The sky over the whole world turns unnatural, thunder rolling in from nowhere and wind rising hard enough to bend the forests, while the people underneath look up and wonder what they have done. He tells it again that he is not here for its world origin and only needs one native. He is not the visitor it remembers. He is rank 9 now, many times what he was, and this is a level 1 world trying to throw him out by force. The world will works that out soon enough and concludes that this intruder is genuinely detestable, strong beyond anything it can answer, and still turning up to bully a world its size. Since force is worth nothing here, it agrees. He tells it he really is only borrowing and has no appetite for the thin little world origin it has managed to save up, and he says it with his lip curled. Then he goes shopping, with the world will following at a wary distance, watching for damage. He finds a suitable person quickly and tells him he is coming along on a spontaneous transmigration trip. His hand comes out, the power of rule surges toward the man he has chosen, and the world will edges backward. He tells it not to miss him and steps back through the passage with his selection in hand. The world will watches the passage seal and lets out a long breath, because in the end it lost only one native, and one native is nothing worth grieving. It withdraws into the world's core, and outside the weather goes back to normal within the minute, leaving the climatologist baffled. My vision returns, and the chime tells me the transmigrator is prepared and asks me to choose his arrival location. I tell it to put him in the human race tribe I first make contact with, and the chime confirms the transmigrator has been deployed. My attention drops onto Earthstar. From here I can see everything that happens on the world I own. His name is Lee Jae-mok. He is a top student out of Seoul National University, and until 4 seconds ago he was working on a design drawing, the way he does every day. Now his vision has cleared into open wilderness, and in front of him stands a crowd of what he can only call savages, covered in hair, wearing clothes woven out of coarse fiber. He pinches himself hard enough to hurt to confirm he is not dreaming. He is not. The good news is that he has received the transmigration everyone daydreams about, and the bad news is that the world he landed in appears to be primitive. He does not have a single wilderness survival skill. Other people transmigrate and become overpowered protagonists, and he has transmigrated in order to suffer. While he takes inventory of his own doom, the tribe is watching every move he makes. Then one steps out ahead of the others, a man with obvious authority, and looks him over with something like recognition. He says a short phrase Lee Jae-mok cannot parse, which in their handful of sounds means the first sage. Their language has not been built yet, and what they have is a set of noises with agreed meanings. It is enough for simple things, though anyone who lives among them long enough learns to read it. That one phrase changes the whole crowd. Their guard drops and their faces fill with respect, which leaves Lee Jae-mok completely lost, since he had been quietly preparing to be tied up and eaten. The chief comes forward and addresses him again as the Sage Lord, gesturing in a way that seems to be an invitation back to the tribe. He grits his teeth and goes. He does not know this world, but a world with people like these has animals to match, and an unarmed man with no survival knowledge will not do better alone. Inside the settlement, he stops being frightened and starts being confused. There are houses, actual built houses, which savages of this era have no business knowing how to make. Their weapons are crude and he can still sort them into categories: spears and forks and halberds and hammers. That is wrong. He is no historian, but he knows early humans worked stone knives and stone spears, and did not run a catalog, and they certainly did not put up buildings. Then he reminds himself that this is not his world, and that human development here cannot be predicted from his own textbooks. The chief walks him into the largest house and makes a few gestures that clearly mean this is his dwelling now. Lee Jae-mok nods. The only thing still nagging him is why the tribe treats him with a courtesy well past hospitality. Since he is here, he decides he may as well make the best of it and start thinking about the rest of his life. His life is not in danger for the moment, and the only real hardship is that a man raised on the information age finds a primitive era unbearably boring. Night comes down and the tribe drills wood for fire with practiced ease, which tells him they have assembled some kind of social system. The hunters come back in ones and twos. The bonfire goes up in the middle of the settlement, and the chief collects him for dinner. The roasted meat is desperately bland. He is in no position to be picky, and cooked meat is more than he had any right to expect. Several days of that nearly break him. Nobody lets him do any work at all, since they feed and house him like a visiting god, and the boredom is total. He is a doer by nature and cannot sit still, so he gets up and walks the tribe end to end, taking its measure. Faster than his own world's history, still far too primitive for a man from his century. Then he sees a patch of gray-white on the ground, and he crouches and rubs one of the stones between his fingers. Limestone. His eyes come alive, because the whole settlement is fenced with wood, and with cement he could pour walls that would make this place genuinely defensible. He reasons it out the way an engineer does, that they have fed and housed him so he owes them something, and that his own life gets safer the stronger the tribe around him is. For cement he needs iron ore too, and in an era like this there should be iron ore waiting to be picked up. He goes looking for the chief and cannot find him, since the chief takes the hunters out during the day. He spends the daylight prospecting instead and finds what he wants. Iron ore comes in black and scarlet and brown and reddish brown depending on what is mixed into the stone, and it sorts into 4 main kinds. Magnetite leaves a black streak, carries a semi-metallic luster, and holds a magnet. Hematite is the anhydrous oxide scarlet lying in enormous natural deposits. Limonite is the hydrated form, weathered out of other ores and the most widely distributed. Siderite is the carbonate ore, low in iron and quick to oxidize into limonite. Night falls. The hunting parties come home, and after dinner he takes a few stones over to the chief and hits the wall he has been dreading. There is no way to explain a chemical process to a man who has no words. He points at the stones and gestures, and the chief stares without a flicker of comprehension, so he gestures harder and slower and longer. It takes an absurd amount of time before anything lands. Then the chief nods heavily, takes the stones and walks out, and his voice booms across the settlement, calling everyone in. The whole tribe comes running, over 2,000 people assembling in one place. The chief tells them to gather, tells them to memorize the appearance of the object in his hand, and passes the stones down the rows for every person to see. Lee Jae-mok breathes out, since the rest comes down to whether 2,000 people can find him enough limestone and iron ore. The next morning he is jolted awake by noise, and when he steps outside there is a procession leaving the settlement that looks like a migration. He expected 100 or 200 to go. Over 1,000 are walking out at once, and the 1,000 staying behind are the old, the weak, the women and the children. Several hundred young men have been kept back by the chief to guard the camp. He revises his standing among these people upward by a considerable margin. He had budgeted months for gathering materials, and at this rate it will be a week or two. 2 months go by, and he settles into the tribe properly. The settlement he stands in at the end of it is not the one he arrived at. High walls poured out of cement run all the way around it, and the houses have been redesigned to his drawings and rebuilt in stone with fireplaces for the winter. A huge granary stands among them. He has also spent 2 months bumping against the limits of how these people communicate, and he keeps turning over whether to teach them a modern language. The trouble is that he is not a linguist, and the best he could honestly offer is a set of simple, unambiguous words. Watching from outside Earthstar, I feel extremely satisfied. This is moving faster than it ever moved when I was down there steering it personally, because every man has his specialty and construction was never mine. The chime tells me I can accelerate Earthstar's time flow now. Yiwu has already run the odds and believes that with Lee Jae-mok in place the human race will come through. An early calamity cannot be too severe, or the ones that hit higher civilizations later would be beyond anything survivable. I agree with the timing. 2 months of steady development have fed me a healthy return in creation points, enough to fund 100 years of acceleration with a margin. I give the order to accelerate civilization development for 100 years. My eyes flood with gold light, and an enormous weight of creation power settles over Earthstar as the points drain away. The planet slides into the torrent of time, and not one living thing down there feels a second of it. Then it arrives. My brows pull together, because barely any time after the acceleration begins I feel the calamity come down onto my world. Lee Jae-mok feels it as unease and nothing more, and it is enough to send him out the door to run. Outside, the wind is coming hard and steady. The trees are thrashing and the clear morning he woke to has been swallowed by black cloud. He shouts at nobody, asking what is happening. 10 years have passed for him since his arrival, compressed by an acceleration he cannot perceive. And in those 10 years, the tribe under his direction has gone through an unprecedented expansion. The population has climbed from around 2,000 to 10,000, some of it born and much of it absorbed from natives spreading in around them. The one thing he did right, he tells himself, was digging a cave a few years back purely because something felt wrong. He shouts the order to gather, and they come, because 10 years of evolution and constant instruction have taught them a good part of what he says. His commands are short and clean, everyone into the cave, food and bedding carried down, the evacuation kept orderly. They obey without hesitation, since his standing among these people now runs higher than the chief's. It takes a full hour to move 10,000 people underground. He takes one last look outside before he follows them down, and heavy snow is already falling with the temperature dropping through the floor. Snow, at least, and not rain. He tells himself the calamity looks manageable, and that is the last comfortable thought he gets to have. Outside Earthstar, my eyes go wide, because a second calamity comes down on top of the first. That is not possible, since every previous run gave me exactly one. The chime offers, without much confidence, that this might be the difference between actively triggering a civilization advancement and passively triggering one. Yiwu did not see it coming either, and privately he wonders whether this system is testing civilizations or strangling them in the crib. The explanation does not change my face, because there is nothing to be done. Once the advancement begins and the calamity is falling, creation points cannot buy the difficulty down. It comes down to whether the human race is tough enough to eat it. 5 years pass under the torrent of time. Lee Jae-mok's face has gone sallow and the weight has come off him badly. He asks how many are left, and the chief beside him swallows dry and stammers out, 5,321, 5 years underground. The food ran out several times and parties had to go up into the granary to bring more down, and even a full granary does not survive that arithmetic. Everyone in the cave has eaten exactly enough to stay alive and not one bite more, and cold and sickness took the rest. To stop disease running through the tunnels, Lee Jae-mok makes himself give the order to carry the dead out and leave them, which is not a thing his education prepared him to say aloud. Then a commotion runs through the cave and he turns his head. The chief's eyes have come alive, and he stammers out, in the handful of words he has learned, that the snow has stopped. They go up together with the crowd opening a path for them, and when they climb out, there are withered yellow heads of grass pushing through the white. Lee Jae-mok stands on the snow and laughs and shouts that the snow has stopped and the calamity is over. The rest come up behind him, and they are wild with it, because 5 years underground cost them half of everyone they knew. They cheer and they weep, and they start planning a new life. The joy lasts under 2 years. Earthstar has just begun putting color back into itself when a scorching sun fixes itself in the sky, and stays. The heat becomes unbearable and the ground bakes for thousands of miles in every direction. Plants shrivel by the field, most of the animals die outright, and the rivers go down to cracked beds. What the human race faces now is a plain lack of drinking water. They do not understand what they have done, since the killing winter has barely finished with them, and now the sky is burning them. So they go down on their knees in rows and beg the heavens for rain. Lee Jae-mok watches that with something bitter in his throat, because a man from his century does not believe in gods. Standing in front of nature at full power makes people look exactly as fragile as they are. The chief stands beside him without a word, glancing at him, and to the chief he is a god-shaped thing that pulled them through once already. He has grown used to being looked at that way. It only becomes unbearable when he has no answer, and then the weight of every life in the tribe settles onto his shoulders and makes it hard to breathe. He swallows to wet a throat that will not stay wet and says they will try. That tomorrow he will take a party out to look for groundwater. The next day he leads them out with tools and starts surveying the local geography. None of these people can read a landscape the way he needs it read, so the whole job falls on him. He holds the position and he has the ability, so he intends to cut a future out of this for them. A full day of work gives him 5 likely sites. The following morning they start digging. Air pressure here is not far off what he knew at home, so 10 meters ought to reach water, and he adds 2 meters for safety. 3 days later the first site is finished and it is dry. He does not let it show because there are 4 left. They hold a rhythm of 1 site every 3 days, and the second is dry, the third is dry, the fourth is dry. His face gets harder every time and his hands have started shaking when he looks at how exhausted the diggers are. 10 days of well digging by hand with no machinery is a monstrous undertaking, and they are attempting it while critically short of water. Several men have come close to dying of thirst in the pits, and the chief has been feeding the entire tribe's water supply to the digging crew. They reach 10 meters at the 5th site. Lee Jae-mok's lips have split open, and he has almost let go of hope, because from where he stands the human race is about to end. He is not willing. He tried harder than he has ever tried at anything, and he still cannot save them. If the heavens did not send him here to save these people, he cannot imagine what they sent him for. He grips the stone hoe and swings it down again and again, driving his own uselessness into the dirt because there is nowhere else to put it. The diggers notice and glance at each other, and the chief shakes his head at them, picks up a hoe of his own, and steps into the pit beside him. One by one, every man there stands back up and goes back to work. The soil starts to change as the shaft goes deeper. Lee Jae-mok freezes over it for a second before the joy hits him, and then he is roaring that there is water and that they should dig. The others take a moment to catch his meaning and then go at it like men possessed. The layers below turn brown with held moisture, and the deeper they cut, the wetter it comes up. At 11.5 meters, the water breaks through and comes up the shaft. He signals to be hauled out, and as the crew clears the pit, the water keeps rising behind them until it settles about 1.5 meters below the wellhead. He has wooden buckets tied onto vines and lowered, and he organizes the whole tribe into a line to drink. When the first bucket comes up, they hand it to him with both hands, wanting their sage lord to taste it first. He cups the water and drinks, and it tastes of earth, and it is the best thing he has ever swallowed. He says they are saved, and the moment that weight comes off his back, his vision goes black and his legs fold. The chief catches him before he hits the ground, since he has worked day and night for weeks and his body has simply stopped. Because of him, the human race survives a second calamity, and because of him, he does not really recover. He falls seriously ill after that collapse, and it takes many days of care before he opens his eyes. When he does, the tribe is packed around his bed to the walls. He looks at them and smiles with real relief, and tells them he did not fail them, that he did it. He already knows he will not live long. He decides it does not matter, since he saved a race and did not disgrace the education he was so proud of. 3 more years pass. The drought lets go of Earth Star by degrees, and after one heavy rain the ground comes back to life all at once. Lee Jae-mok dies of his illness that same year, and he goes out smiling. The heavens made a joke of him by dropping him into this world, and he does not regret a day of it. The human race buries him that day with everything they have, and by then they have begun to shed their savagery, with reason slowly taking the front seat. In the records they keep, afterward they canonize him as the true lord who overcame calamity, the one who stood against the disasters of nature and carried his people out of suffering. Lee Jae-mok's soul comes apart the instant he dies, like smoke off a wet fire, and I spend creation points without asking the price to hold the pieces together. He worked himself into the ground for a race that was not his, on a rock that was not his, because I put him there. That is the whole accounting, and I am not going to argue it down. I ask my system whether it can send him home. It answers with a soft chime and tells me that it can, though the man's body was destroyed and has to be reshaped from nothing. Reshaping runs on system points, it adds, in the voice of a clerk quoting a fee. 5,000 system points is my entire net worth, so I ask for the number before agreeing to anything. Not much, it says, Lee Jae-mok was an ordinary mortal out of an ordinary world, and a body for him costs 100 system points. Then it suggests, unprompted, that I spend a little more and build him something better than what he had. My system has never once encouraged me to spend money on anybody but myself. Once the mission clears, I come into 100,000 system points, so I tell it to do the job properly. It spends 500. The body it grows wears his own face in his own hands, and nothing short of violence will kill it before 130. He will reach that age carrying the vigor of a man of 20. His world is an ordinary place, my system explains, and too long a life there would attract the wrong kind of attention. The frame is also 2 or 3 times stronger than the men who will stand next to it. The chime says the body is forged and asks me to set the soul inside, and I wave my hand and he settles into it the way water finds a jar. Yi Wu opens the world gate himself and carries the man back through. Time runs at nearly the same rate on both sides of that door. Only a few days have gone by in the world Lee Jae-mok left, since every year he burned was burned on Earth's star. Yi Wu reaches into the local rules and edits the reason for the man's absence, until everyone who noticed remembers a short trip, and nothing stranger. Then he drops 100 million won into the man's account, out of sources that will audit clean. Rules are the only real currency, and if he can think a thing, the thing is done. He wishes Lee Jae-mok a pleasant life, and is gone before that world's world will turn its head. Lee Jae-mok wakes staring at a ceiling he knows. A few breaths later, he sits bolt upright and pats himself down, saying out loud that he died, that he definitely died. His phone tells him 3 days have passed, and he repeats the number to the empty room, because he spent more than 10 years on the other side of that door. He wonders what will become of them now, then answers himself, since he arranged everything that needed arranging before the end. His banking app chimes with 100 million won received, and he sits holding the phone for a long time. The chime in my skull reports that the transmigrator has been delivered, and I tell it I heard. 2 calamities down, and everything left on the schedule is just time. So I open the river of time and let the human race run. 100 years go by in the space of a breath. Then the panel comes, congratulating me, because the civilization under my command has cleared its calamity. It names the new civilization level as the agricultural age, with the human race still listed as its race. The calamity rating lands at S, and because the Star Lord did not intervene, the rating climbs again, closing at S+. The creation point feedback that follows turns my poverty into money so fast it feels like a clerical error. That is not even the good part. A civilization that advances drags its Star Lord up behind it, and some power I cannot see puts a hand under my strength and lifts. My system files in behind that, chiming that the mission is complete and paying out 100,000 system points in 1 silver draw. Then it opens the full readout, the way it does when it wants me to see how far I have crawled. It names me as the host, Gang Biom, and gives my level as level 2 Star-Lord. My bound planet is Earth Star, listed as undergoing transformation. My talents are Rich Star at A grade and Civilization Evolution at A grade, and my subordinate civilization is the human race, currently in the agricultural age. My system functions are Plunder, All Things Amplification at tenfold, and Alternate World Summoning, and my system points sit at 104,500. Then it closes as it always closes, with the system evaluation informing me that I am the worst host it has ever had, and asking me to please become stronger. I am too rich this morning to be insulted. I tell it to spend the silver draw, because I have never let a chance at strength sit unclaimed. The chime congratulates me on obtaining the A-grade talent Stinginess, and my mouth goes flat. Stinginess? Not a sword, not a bloodline, not a river of fire, but the plain, small word for a man who will not spend. Then the effect prints, and Stinginess cuts the creation points a Star-Lord invests into civilization development by 30%. That is genuinely good, and I would have taken it happily on its own. But I am not looking at the talent anymore. I am waiting on my system, and it does not keep me waiting. The chime says the A-grade talent Stinginess has received a tenfold amplification, and that Stinginess is evolved into the S-grade talent Greed. Under Greed, the creation points a Star-Lord invests into development are cut by half, and the creation points that come back as feedback are multiplied 10 times over. The description signs itself as one of the 7 deadly sins of desire, and says that everything within sight is mine. My pupils go wide. A discount on the way in, and a tenfold multiplier on the way out, and even a pig could take flight. There is no cheat code in all the heavens and myriad worlds that plays as dirty as a system. Yi Wu is quietly surprised himself, which is not a thing his host will ever hear about. He had underestimated all things amplification, treating it as a bonus rather than an engine, and he is only now seeing that a rule-based function like this has no obvious ceiling. Every world he entered before was low and thin, with too few extraordinary things in it for the function to bite into. His mood keeps climbing. 10 times is where all things amplification starts, and the way to raise that multiplier is to raise his own rank. Rank 9 has to be a floor rather than a summit, and clearing this assessment should open the function at several dozen times. Of his 3 functions though, plunder has the highest ceiling. Stripping another system's functions off its corpse and wearing them is not a mechanic but a crime the rules forgot to name. He mutters about what his opponent might be carrying, hoping it is not something poor. A promotion assessment pairs like with like, so at equal rank, 3 functions against 1 is not a fight, but arithmetic. Somewhere else in this realm, the panels are singing for another man. They congratulate that Star-Lord on surviving his promotion calamity and raise his civilization to a level 1 civilization. They name the intelligent race as human and the extraordinary power as magic. The calamity rating comes back S, the comprehensive evaluation comes back S+, and a large creation point feedback drops in behind it. The man listens with the corners of his mouth curling, since a level 1 civilization is worth every point he poured down that hole. His system follows with its own chime, telling him he has completed the promotion assessment and paying out 300,000 system points and 3 silver draws. He spends all 3 at once. The first gives him the B-grade talent Heart of Wisdom, the second the A-grade talent Magic Spring, and the third a Magic Crystal Mountain Range. Jomo is delighted with the haul, since his luck has finally coughed up an A-grade. He opens his panel to look at the shape of himself. The host is Jomo, the level is level 3 Star-Lord, and the bound planet is Demon Spirit Star. His talents are Extraordinary Power at A-grade, Heart of Wisdom at B-grade, and Magic Spring at A-grade. His subordinate civilization is the humans. His civilization level is level 1. His system function is copy, and his system points stand at 300,000. Extraordinary Power seeds a random extraordinary system inside his civilization. Heart of Wisdom sharpens the intelligence of the races he owns, and Magic Spring floods his world with magic power. His eyes light up at the third one, because it arrives exactly when he needs it. His first A-grade talent had already birthed the system of magic inside his civilization, but the world itself was dry. He had been burning creation points month after month to keep the magic concentration of Demon Spirit Star high enough for his people. Now the world makes its own. He lets himself remember how thin the beginning was. He was a small level 1 Star-Lord with nothing worth stealing, and that was the only reason he survived the Star Domain where Star-Lords gather. His system sent him there, and the raiders who came for him left in disgust, because a man with no resources is not worth the trouble. Only that domain's ban on killing Star-Lords kept him breathing. All of it was the plan. One of the Star-Lords who robbed him carried the A-grade talent Extraordinary Power, and through the contact of that robbery, he copied it clean off the man. That talent was never his. When the world mutated, Jomo awakened no Star-Lord talent at all, which is why he spent so long as nothing, and why nobody bothered hunting for his home base. Then he bound a system with the function copy, and the stolen talent became the first rung of a ladder. In a very short stretch, he went from level 1 Star-Lord to level 3, dragging his civilization to level 1 with him. A level 1 civilization is also called a planetary civilization, able to use every scrap of its star's energy that reaches the planet, and to control everything on it. The strongest thing Jomo ever saw was a level 2 civilization, back in that gathering star domain. Anyone who assumes level 2 is one step up has never stood beside 1, because the gap is wider than the gap between a dog and a man. A level 2 civilization is a stellar civilization, one that has broken free of its planet and taken hold of a star, and through that star it moves any matter in its own system. So he stays small on purpose. If a high civilization built by another Star-Lord ever noticed him, wiping him out would cost about as much effort as drinking a glass of water. His own people cannot yet cross between stars to run, either. The universe is enormous, and hunting a Star-Lord inside it is harder than finding one needle in a field of haystacks. He has his system deploy the Magic Crystal Mountain Range onto the Demon Spirit continent, and the chime confirms a range thick with magic crystal ore that will grow fresh veins over the centuries. With Magic Spring already feeding the world, a mountain of crystal is icing on a cake he has eaten. He asks his system what comes next. It tells him to keep developing the civilization and to get them universe travel technology first. He frowns and asks whether it is telling him to plunder other Star-Lords, which seems aggressive for a man who has spent his career hiding. The chime says he has it right. There is a potential enemy in this realm, and if he cannot kill them early, the whole thing locks into a stalemate. The system means Yewu, of course, and being a system itself, it can think of nothing else. This is a system assessment, and the past condition is one dead rival and nothing more. It does not care how strong its host becomes. Once that rival is dead, its rank goes up, and whatever happens to Jomo afterward is not its problem. Until then, it builds him as fast as he can be built, and it does not believe the other side can outrun its own protege. On the raw numbers, it is correct, since the civilization under Yewu's command has only just staggered into its agricultural age. The gap has nothing to do with Yewu's competence. Jomo's civilization was never destroyed, and when his system arrived, his people already lived in a feudal era with a settled society and a finished language. The system put a rocket under a working machine, while Yewu's host inherited ash and grew everything from the first stone up. All of that can be closed, and Jomo's own advantage is already thinning. His development curve has flattened badly, and he can no longer dump creation points into accelerating the time current the way he did early on. Centuries of acceleration would drain him to the bone. His expression stiffens and he asks who this potential enemy is. He is genuinely rattled, because his system never showed the slightest interest in that level 2 civilization's Star Lord. The system says nothing, since the rules forbid it from revealing the assessment, though warnings are permitted. It tells him only to develop quickly, that the threat is enormous, and that the opponent's potential sits on the same level as his own. His pupils shrink. He has never found his own ceiling since the binding, and he is not an idiot, so the hint lands where the system wants it. I keep the time current running after Lee Janwook goes home, and the numbers coming back are not impressive. My people are inching along, and I say out loud that maybe I should go down there and push. My system answers that I do have expertise in a specific field, but the human race cannot make a real leap until they solve language, it says. And if time and evolution will not solve that, then force has to. Then it adds delicately that I am not skilled in language systems. It is not wrong. I can barely manage the one language I was born into. I tell it to use alternate world summoning and fetch me a linguist this time. The chime says no problem and asks me to wait. The world gate that opens is not the one Lee Janwook came through. My system reads the world on the far side, finds it ordinary, and picks a suitable candidate out of it. The chime says the transmigrator is ready, and I tell it to drop him onto Earthstar. But the situation this time is a little special. This candidate is old, and moved body, and all he will not last long enough to finish the job. That tracks. The man is a university scholar who spent a lifetime on languages, so of course he is not 20. I ask whether there is a way around it. Soul transmigration will do, my system says, and it can hold his original body in storage while the soul works. There is no real difference to me, so I tell it to go with the soul. It places him inside a human race woman on Earthstar who has just conceived. Jaehaeon tries to open his eyes and cannot. They stay shut, heavy as coins, and then he notices he has lost control of the rest of himself as well. His first thought is that he had a stroke in his chair and woke as a vegetable, because the chair is where he was, dozing through a quiet afternoon. In that dark and sunless place, he has no way to count the days, and he surfaces into clear thought for maybe 10 minutes at a stretch. Slowly, his senses sharpen enough to give him an answer, and the answer is that he is inside a womb. The realization frightens him out of what is left of his wits, because he is a man in his 40s. He keeps checking, and the checking keeps confirming it, so he makes himself accept it. He has read enough over the shoulders of younger people to know there are only two options. Either he transmigrated or he was reborn. 8 months pass outside. On the day his head is pulled forward, and the rest of him follows into the air. He takes his first breath, and the shudder of his throat turns into a cry. The people around him relax at the sound, because a baby that cries is a baby that lives. 13 years go by. Jaehaeon has his answer by then, soul transmigration, and the world he landed in leaves him with nothing polite to say. In his eyes, this is a low primitive tribe, and they do not even have a working language. He thought about fixing that early, since building a language would be easy work for a man of his training, but a child with no standing cannot reform anything, so he spent years buying prestige instead, and under his quiet corrections the tribe improved and his status rose with it. He naps under a tree and tells himself something about this place is off, and that he cannot put a finger on what. In a primitive tribe with no language at all, the houses are built of cement, and so are the walls that ring the settlement. Human development does not run in that order. He buries the thought, because there is nobody to ask, and he will die without ever learning that another transmigrator came before him. The tribe keeps no written records, and there is nothing here yet that can remember. He watches the old chief instead, and the old chief is close to the end of his rope. A few more years in age will take him, and the man everyone will look at is Jaehaeon. That is the day he starts building the language. Having studied language his entire life, he can imagine nothing more thrilling than laying one down for a whole civilization. 2 more years drift past. The chief calls him into the room, where others are already waiting, every one of them a person with weight in the tribe, and every one of them nothing beside him. He reads the room in a glance and knows what day it is. The chief sits back with a solemn face, looks over the assembly, and signals Jaehaeon forward. Not one man there is surprised, since they have watched him work for years and are all convinced the staff belongs to him. The chief puts that staff into his hands, a thing passed down through more generations than anyone has counted, and Jaehaeon takes it with a heavy face. The human race has a new chief. The old man, his last duty discharged, dies peacefully within a few days, and the tribe buries him properly. The next morning, the new chief starts building a language. He knows better than to rush it. Speech first, then written record, each step given room to breathe. He also discovers, the moment he starts, that the work is far harder than it looked in his head. These people have never met anything new in their lives, and they adapt to it badly. He makes them practice more each day, beginning with a handful of sounds for recognizing food, and he leans on the fact that a chief's word is absolute. 10 years pass, and the tribe has a rough working language. Jaehaeon lets out a long breath over it, because the human race here turned out smarter than he expected. Even the things they did not understand, they eventually mastered by feeling their way through in silence. He puts it down to something in their blood. He has no idea he is looking at a Star-Lord talent, or that the blood was tuned by a man he will never meet. Next comes the script, and he plans it like a campaign. He will teach a small group of the sharpest people and let them carry it outward, and he gives himself 30 years to finish the system. He calls for people, and when they come, he tells them to fetch Jang Sam, Lisa, and a few of the others. The names are his own doing, handed out casually for the sake of remembering who is who. Names in this era are labels, since there is no document anywhere that could disagree with you. 6 of them arrive, Jang Sam and Lee Saw at the front, and they ask what he needs. He tells them the tribe can now speak without barriers, and that the next stage begins today. Jang Sam says the credit is the chief's alone, since in the old days understanding another man took years of contact and a lot of guessing at his hands. Lee Saw agrees loudly and the rest pile on after him, and Jaehaeon enjoys every word while keeping his face stern. He tells them he called them here to work, not to flatter him. Now that speech is solved, he says, it is time to create the script. They repeat the word back at him without understanding it. So he explains that a script is a set of symbols that records language, the written body of speech, the thing a civilization grows once it is far enough along. It can hold everything, and it carries history forward. This normally takes thousands of years to evolve, he tells them, and they are going to skip the road and take the destination. He can see they have understood perhaps a third of it, so he waves it off and tells them to learn it first and teach it after. In the first year of Gaiman, the script came into being made by Chief Y, and with it the human race received its first true language system. After years of study, the people held that key in their own hands, and society opened into a period of growth nothing in their history could match. Writing cut away the waste of explaining a thing twice, and gave a long history somewhere to live. The generations after Jaehaeon wrote down everything he had done, and gave him the title Gaiman, and the year of that founding became the first year of Gaiman. In the 100th year of Gaiman, the population exploded to 10 million, filled out as much by absorbing the natives scattered across the land as by birth. In the 200th year of Gaiman, the number climbed to 30 million, and society rose with it while its faults surfaced, one after another. Dissenting voices appeared quickly among the human race and were put down just as quickly, since an enlightened people breeds ambitious men as reliably as it breeds farmers. In the 300th year of Gaiman, the voices calling against the rule of the chief had the backing of most of the race. In the 310th year of Gaiman, the split came, and the great tribe broke into scattered groups that carved out territory across Earth's star. With a population that large, a broken piece could grow back to full strength quickly, and the race settled into 7 separate powers. In the 330th year of Gaimon, those 7 fenced their land, raised cities, and pushed outward, and the word kingdom entered human history. In the 450th year of Gaiman, after a century of growth, the 7 kingdoms had swollen until their edges touched, and each of them accused the others and demanded land back. Appetite grew as fast as territory, and every one of them wanted to swallow a neighbor. Limits on what the land could give turned into grievances, and at first nobody drew a sword because they were all the same blood. Then the harvests failed, and the same blood started to look like a reason to help oneself. In the 455th year of Gaimun, the war came, and the 7 kingdoms tore at each other through the bloodiest years the race had recorded. Populations thinned, the fields filled with bodies, and the fighting stopped without resolving anything, and every court blamed the war on somebody else's court. In the 500th year of Gaimun, after more than 40 years of recovery, the kingdoms had some color back in their faces, though nothing near the old peak. 10 years of quiet was all it took for them to forget, and the smell of war began drifting across Earthstar again. I watched the whole thing unfold and cannot think of a single useful thing to say. I intervened. I dropped 2 scholars into their history and bought them water and language, and they arrived at exactly the war their own history would have produced anyway. Either I did this, or this is simply what humans are. I am not going to solve that one, and honestly I am too lazy to try. What I can see is that if I leave it alone, the war grinds on for centuries, so I am going down there myself. My system already returned Jaehaeon to his own body, which took a few days outside and several hundred years on Earthstar. Before I step through, though, I need to be worth stepping through as. A Star-Lord who enters his own world arrives as an ordinary man, and ordinary men do not end wars quickly. So I count what is left, 100,000 system points. After the first summoning took 5,000 and the body reshaping took 500. The second summoning came in cheaper at 4,000, with a little more spent strengthening that body. I decide to convert every last point into draws, and I ask whether 10 bronze draws or a single silver draw is the better play. My system actually thinks about it before answering. Bronze caps out at B grade, it says, which would not move the needle for me, while silver goes as high as A+. I tell it to take the silver, and the chime deducts 100,000 system points and hands me one draw. I use it immediately. The result is the A+ grade talent Divine Miracle. Divine Miracle lets a Star-Lord who enters the world beneath him trigger a phenomenon on arrival, and gives him 3 chances to act at 1/10,000th of his true strength. 3 swings of a god's hand at a war of millions. I am already doing the math on how to spend them. Then my system fires. The chime announces that the A+ grade talent Divine Miracle has taken a 10-fold amplification and evolved into the S grade talent Divine Advent. Under Divine Advent, a Star-Lord entering his subordinate civilization triggers a phenomenon and begins at 1/10,000th of his strength. From there, the seal keeps loosening as time passes, until he stands at a full 1% of his peak. Not 3 swings, a rising tide with my name on it. Yi Wu raises an eyebrow at that. Privately, is his host's luck genuinely this good, pulling the top prize out of an A+ draw? And if the man's luck runs like this, how did he manage to be so useless for so long? I am staring at the reward and grinning like an idiot, because nothing in the catalog suits me better this week. I also have a theory. Every draw I have made lands on the highest tier, or the one right under it, and the beginner package did the same. My luck has never done anything for me, so I refuse to believe that is my luck talking. I thank my system for rigging the machine. Yi Wu says nothing. He knows exactly what the man is thinking, and he has not touched a single draw. An explanation he cannot prove is not worth giving, so he lets the misunderstanding stand. The chime tells me to depart quickly. Greed means creation points are no longer something I ration, so I set the flow rate as high as I want it. 100 years on Earth Star for every day outside. Then I step through. In the Go Kingdom's palace, the phenomenon wakes everybody at once, and the sky over the 7 kingdoms does something no sky has done before. A middle-aged man in heavy silk asks the young man beside him what he makes of it. Bang says he does not know, that nothing like it appears anywhere in the histories, and that if it is not something a person made, then, and he lets the sentence stop there. His king hears the rest of it anyway. Bang says the quarrel between the 7 kingdoms is escalating, that 40 years of peace let every court forget how the last war felt, and that another one is coming. Then he asks, carefully, why it has to. He has read the same histories, in which the human race climbed out of barbarism under a line of sages, and he cannot see why one people will not shake hands and grow together. Go Book laughs without much humor and says the shared origin is exactly the problem, because no one born equal will kneel to an equal. The root of it is human greed, he says, and he asks whether Bang would truly keep his hands at his sides with power lying in reach. Bang goes pale and says he would not dare. Go Buck lets it go and pats his shoulder, then talks past him. The world crowds in for profit and crowds out for profit, he says, and a kingdom that wants to keep growing has to take its neighbors' resources. A sign like tonight's will have been seen from every capital on the map, so he orders men sent out to find the source of it. The phenomenon burns for a full hour before it fades, and Go Buck watches the bright moon afterward and says a storm is coming. I come down somewhere else entirely, and my landing spot is a tribe. It is a human race tribe which surprises me until I read the history under it. When the Great Split came in the 310th year, a small fraction refused to secede and refused to crown anybody, out of respect for the sages. They walked away from the 7 kingdoms and built in the emptiest country on Earth's star. They have spent 2 centuries believing a sage will come back and lead them home. The golden light comes down and the tribe below it stops breathing. As the light thins, the figure standing inside it becomes visible, and the figure is me, which is still an adjustment. I can see them sweating from here, because a thing that arrives like this is either a rescue or an execution, and they have no way to tell which. I ask who the chief of the tribe is. An old man comes forward on shaking legs, says that he is, and asks who I am. I ask whether he would believe me if I said I was the god of the ancient age who brought fire to the human race. I do not need the line to sell it. The divine power standing off my skin is doing all the work, and the sky over the settlement is still throwing off phenomena. He says he believes, and he says it with his whole chest. So I tell him to hand me his position, since I have come to end the 7 kingdoms and open a new era for the human race. The old man does not hesitate for even a breath. He puts his walking stick into my hands, and the stick turns out to be the staff of the first chief of the human race, worn to almost nothing by the centuries. I spend a thread of Star-Lord power on it, and in front of everybody it becomes a scepter with divinity running through the grain. The old man asks very carefully by what title he should address me. I came here to build a system with a throne at the center, and a throne needs a name with weight on it. I tell him my name is Gangbiam, and that my divine name is Star-Lord. It is not a great name. I have never been good at naming things, and a derivative of my own job title was the best my brain produced under pressure. The old man drops to his knees, calling out to the Star-Lord, and the rest of the tribe follows him down. I tell them to rise, and I tell them the development of the human race has deviated from what I intended, which is why I came down in person. From today, the tribe is renamed the Divine Court, and the office of chief becomes the office of high priest. I will hold that office myself for now, and after I leave, any man who wants it must pass trials for it. I let my aura off the leash while I say it, and the sky obliges with special effects on cue. I ask what the population of the Divine Court is. The old man tells me a little over 100,000, and I frown, because that is not a nation, that is a large town. He hurries to explain before I can be angry. When the original tribe broke, most people followed whoever had prestige and went off to carve kingdoms, and only a fraction followed the last chief out here. Even that fraction numbered in the millions once. Then the 7 kingdoms decided a tribe was a threat, and culled them for years. In the end, out of something like pity, they were allowed to live on the condition that their numbers never pass 150,000. I tell him to have everyone assembled within a few days, because they are marching with me against the 7 kingdoms, one at a time. He hesitates and starts to say that they have only these few people. Before he finishes, I wave my hand and a palace comes up out of the bare ground, whole, in front of the crowd. Their pupils shrink. Whatever faith they walked in with doubles on the spot, and the old man swallows the rest of his sentence and tells me they will not fail my command. I walk into the palace I just built, mostly because I want to know what 1/10,000th of my strength actually buys. On the evidence, it buys a man who could take a 1,000,000-strong army by himself, which is flattering and completely unsustainable. I do not want the 7 kingdoms annihilated. I want them kneeling in one structure, with divine power sitting above every other authority, because a centralized world is a manageable world. Everything that went wrong on Earth Star went wrong while I was not looking. Nobody in the 7 kingdoms sleeps that night. Every court sends investigators after the phenomenon, and every one of them comes back with nothing at all. The whole event reads as a natural occurrence, which none of the rulers believe for a second. Strange signs right before a major war smell like somebody's hidden card, and a hidden card played on the battlefield could leave the loser carved up by the other 6. So they all quietly postpone the war and turn instead to the ages they have grown in each other's capitals for decades. What follows is a few days of knife work in the dark. In the Go Kingdom, Go Buck asks Wambang how the search has gone. Wambang reports that they burned every agent planted in the other 6 kingdoms and found no hidden card anywhere, and that the other 6 were doing exactly the same thing. They have killed several thousand foreign spies in a handful of days, and the population is terrified. Go Buck narrows his eyes and admits nothing is unusual, though one of the 6 could be playing innocent as part of the same performance. Wambang asks, hesitantly, whether the little tribe could be behind the commotion. Go Buck's face stiffens, because the idea is not impossible. That tribe could be flicked out of existence with one finger. Since old men, women, and children included, there are only 100,000 of them. But history is full of miracles nobody saw coming. He is opening his mouth to give an order when a messenger comes in shouting, out of breath and clearly urgent. The man reports a large army sighted 50 miles out, numbering less than 100,000. Allegiance unknown. Go Buck cannot make sense of it, since the whole continent is on a hair trigger and only a fool would move first. He sneers, says he will go see what gives them their confidence, and rides out with 700,000 men. He would have brought more if more existed. The whole human race is barely 30 million people spread over 7 kingdoms, a bit over 4 million each. Take out the old, the young, and everyone keeping the farms and workshops running, and 700,000 marks a kingdom at the height of its prosperity. That army rolls out of the city and covers the wilderness, dense black dots from horizon to horizon. Go Buck rides a carriage pulled by more than a dozen horses. The 2 forces halt 10 miles apart, and he sends scouts forward for information. In my own carriage, Takwan Myong leans in to tell me a large army has appeared ahead of us. I open my eyes and look through the distance with divine sight, counting them as easily as reading a receipt. I tell him it is the Go Kingdom, that we go straight ahead, that we ignore them, and that nobody needs to worry about being hurt. He takes the order without blinking and passes it down the line, and the army keeps walking. We meet Go Buck scouts almost at once. They cannot believe we are still advancing, so they wheel their horses and shout back, asking what force we are and how we dare move against the Go Kingdom. Takwan Myong glances at me and gets nothing, so he has a man answer for him. The last light of the old order has gone out. The man calls back, and a new order is about to be born. The 7 kingdoms that fall will be the nourishment that birth requires, and unification is inevitable, and the divine court is duty-bound to bring it. The scout has never heard of a divine court in his life, and it is not his job to have opinions, so he rides back and repeats it to his king. Gobuk slams the throne and calls it arrogance. Some damned divine court playing tricks, a rabble of less than 100,000 talking that way in front of his army. He orders 100,000 iron cavalry sent out to flatten them with no mercy shown. His great general draws his sword and calls for the iron cavalry of the Go Kingdom, and the answering wind cry rolls across the field like weather. Then the general leads the charge. 100,000 riders come at us with a sound that turns the ground into a drum. My people go cold all the way through. These are iron cavalry, and against them a line of men with swords and blades is not an army but livestock. There are fewer of us than there are of them, and everyone in my ranks has just done that arithmetic. I can feel the whole formation about to come apart behind me. Without a show right now, I will be leading a stampede in the wrong direction. I call out that there are always creatures on the ground who offend the glory of the gods, and then I stop talking and move. My eyes light gold and the pressure comes off me in a wave. When I bring my hands down, a vast phantom of the divine court descends out of the sky onto the charging cavalry. It lands like a dropped mountain and throws dust over half the field. The riders slam into walls that were not there a heartbeat ago, and a great many are trampled by their own comrades. They try to punch their way out, and nothing they do marks the structure anywhere. 100,000 iron cavalry die inside it, sealed off as completely as if the world had ended without them. The whole battlefield stops. On my side, the fear turns into something closer to fever, and a great many of my people stop being followers and become believers in one breath. Divine might is the word going around, and it is the right word. On the other side, 700,000 men stare at the dust and ask each other whether that is a power a human being is allowed to hold. Gobuk stands up shouting that it is impossible, absolutely impossible. One bang catches him when he sways, and his eyes are bitter, because their guess was right and the divine court is that small tribe. Gobuk shoves him off and screams for the entire army to attack. Nobody moves at first. Against men they have the will to fight, but against a god there is nothing in a soldier to draw on. Gobuk's face twists and he abandons what dignity he had left, telling them he feeds them and clothes them, that their lives belong to him, and that anyone who retreats dies. The ranks go forward, because the generals are close and the god is far. Tak Wanmyong reports the new advance to me with a calm face and a voice that is anything but calm. What I did has settled every doubt in him, and the excitement pouring off the man is not about victory but about having picked the right god. I tell him not to worry, that more of them changes nothing, and that my purpose was never to destroy the people of the 7 kingdoms. They are all human race, all my subjects eventually, and I intend to spare their lives. That is the polite version. The practical version is that 1/10,000th of my strength does not erase millions with a gesture, so I have to work through them at a pace. The distance between a level 1 Star Lord and a level 2 is a step, and the distance between level 2 and level 3 is a canyon. To cross it, the civilization under me has to reach level 1, which will take a very long time. Tak Wanmyong tells me my mercy is great and that all humanity should praise me, with his eyes shining like a man at a revival. My mouth twitches. In my old life, this kid would have run the most profitable pyramid scheme in Seoul. I tell him that after my next move, the enemy's discipline collapses on its own, and that all we have to do then is take the Go Kingdom's monarch alive. Then I stand up. Suppressing several 100,000 men at once is still real work at my current strength, and I would rather nobody watch me look tired afterward. While everyone watches, my figure blurs, and I am standing 100 meters above their army. The advance stops dead beneath me. A man is flying over them, and flying is not something mortals do. And the words God of the Divine Court move through the ranks faster than any order could. Gobuk's smile dies on his face, since he promised to expose the fraud a minute ago, and the fraud is now hovering over his soldiers. I take a breath and pull every thread of divine power in this body up at once. The sky turns solid gold, and the pressure I put on the field locks onto the army under me. They cannot breathe properly, and every instinct they own starts screaming at them to leave. Somebody yells to run, and the neat formations tear apart in every direction, as men choose their own lives. Then I speak the name of it, pillar of judgment, imprisonment, and my voice comes back off the whole sky. Every man on that field hears it land inside his own soul rather than his ears. Golden light falls in columns. The soldiers make it a few steps at most before a beam runs them through from crown to sole and pins them where they stand. There is no pain in it, which is somehow worse. They lose their bodies and keep their eyes, and everywhere those eyes turn, the army is staked to the ground exactly as they are. Holding that move empties me. I flash back to the carriage on legs that do not entirely belong to me and tell Tak Wanmyong the rest is his to handle. Then I shut the door and draw the curtains before he can ask a question. He takes it as a test set for him personally by his god, and he is thrilled about it. He bows to the closed carriage, swears he will not fail his lord's trust, and leads the army forward. What he gives them is not a battle order but a sermon. He tells the pinned soldiers that for thousands of years sages came down to lead the human race out of barbarism into prosperity. We all come from one origin, he says, and war has only ever handed us pain and dead sons. The race is supposed to be one and at peace as it was in the old days, and for that the Lord has descended in person. Perhaps every sage in the histories was the Lord wearing another face. So put down the grudge in your chest, he tells them, and come into the divine court. Go-Book listens to all of it with a face gone gray. 700,000 men beaten this fast and this completely by a god who might have been every sage in his own scripture. He sinks back onto the throne with nothing left to hold him up. Wanbang tries to find something comforting and cannot, because a defeated monarch has one fate. Go-Book tells him to go surrender with the rest and keep his life. Wanbang keeps staring out at the distant carriage and asks whether the human race really will get a new era. Go-Book laughs and says that if the man out there is truly a god, then maybe the slogan is not a lie. Then he draws his sword. Wanbang says it is a pity that he will not live to see the new era, and draws his own. Go-Book looks at him in surprise and starts to say his name. Without his king's charity, Wanbang tells him a starving boy would have died in one cold winter. He would rather not let his king walk a lonely road with nobody to talk to. Go-Book tells him he has a good heart. The monarch of the Go Kingdom dies on his own sword. After that, his armies come in one unit at a time to surrender, and Tak Wanmyang folds each of them into hours. Inside the carriage, where I am lying still and waiting for my body to forgive me, a chime goes off. A system mission has triggered, and the objective is to annihilate the 7 kingdoms and establish a new era for the human race, with completion standing at 1 of 7. The reward is 300,000 system points and 1 silver draw. I did not expect a bonus on this trip, and between this and the last payout I now have 4 silver draws coming. My system tells me that if I want to get stronger faster, I need to trigger system missions myself. In this examination hall, the underlying rules have to approve a mission before it can be issued, so the more trouble the host causes, the more often the rules find something to reward. Crisis and opportunity share a room. As long as the trouble does not kill you, you make trouble right up to the edge of dying. I tell it I understand and that I will find things to do. Once I can get out of this star domain, I will go looking for somebody else's business to ruin. Tak Wanmyang comes to report once the Go Kingdom's army has been absorbed, and asks what my next plan is. I tell him that after an upheaval like this, the people will be frightened, so we take the territory in hand first, and move on the remaining 6 afterward. Then I tell him the administration is his problem, and that he had better not disappoint me. The army walks into the cities of the Go Kingdom and finds the shutters closed and the streets empty. Inside the palace, the news has already arrived, that the front collapsed, that the emperor died in the field, that an enemy army is in the capital. The staff are scrambling for any door that still opens, and Tak Wanmyang has the imperial city surrounded before most of them get out. He calls for surrender and order and promises death to anyone who slips away. Then he gives them the line that actually works. For the Lord's vision of unity, he says, the innocent will not be slaughtered, and everyone outside the Go imperial bloodline is entirely safe. Even those inside it can be pardoned if their repentance is sincere. Everything lands where I wanted it. The common people are told to live exactly as before, and that no army will touch them unjustly, and they do not believe a word of it. Fish on a cutting board comply anyway. 3 days later, the news of the Go Kingdom's death reaches the other 6. The first reaction in every court is refusal to believe it, because the Go Kingdom was not a weak state, upper middle at worst among the 7. Then the scouts confirm it, and 6 monarchs discover at the same time that they cannot feel the floor. One throne room after another runs the same conversation, the king demanding to know where a force like that came from. The ministers preferring not to be the man who speaks first. One of them finally does. He tells his king this was no impulse but a planned onslaught, and that the enemy means to unify the 7 kingdoms. They destroyed the Go Kingdom without butchering its people, which means they are not animals. They took a country without plundering it, which is the appetite of a founder rather than a raider. And they already govern well enough to buy hearts. A force with ambition, strength, and patience, buried for centuries and now stepping into the open, can only want one thing. The whispering that follows is agreement. The king asks who is next, and his minister answers without hesitating that it will be the U Kingdom. The U Kingdom's court is already tearing itself in half over the same question. Some want to march at once, some want to seal the borders and wait, and Yuso sits through the shouting until his patience snaps and he orders silence. When the room goes quiet, he tells them he summoned them for strategy, not for noise, and that nobody speaks again without a plan and a reason attached. One official steps out for the preemptive strike. The enemy has just finished a war, while the U Kingdom is stronger than the Go Kingdom ever was, with 1 million men under arms. Strike now, with the king himself leading, and the enemy is caught unprepared, whereas waiting lets them consolidate into something nobody can move. Even a successful defense leaves the U Kingdom bled out with 5 other kingdoms watching hungrily. The initiative is here today and gone tomorrow. A second official steps out immediately to bury that idea. He argues for holding the cities, since the intelligence says the entire Go army was captured rather than beaten, which makes the enemy's combat power total rather than merely superior. March out and the lines stretch. The fighting happens on foreign soil, and the main camp sits exposed at home. The moment another kingdom takes advantage of that, the U kingdom becomes the next Go kingdom. The first man loses his temper and snaps that a truce signed with the other 5 would secure the rear. The second man detonates. A truce document is scrap paper, he says, worth something in peacetime and nothing in a season like this one. The 7 kingdoms have gone to war over a strip of farmland and a copper mine, and the instant their home camp is soft, every mask on the continent comes off. Then he asks openly what the first man is really trying to arrange, and the first man goes red and cannot answer. Yuso has already drifted toward defense, and with nothing better on the table he rules for holding the cities. The court praises his wisdom. The winner cannot resist throwing a triumphant look across the floor, and the loser, still choking on his own blood pressure, goes down in a heap. Yuso orders him carried out for treatment, then closes the matter. The defenses are to be reinforced, and grain bought up in bulk from the other 5 kingdoms, so that a siege cannot starve them out. 3 days pass while they build walls. I spend them getting my body back, and I get more than that, because a piece of the seal on me comes loose and my strength climbs. I can now put out 3 10,000ths of my peak, which is twice what I walked in with. Tak Wanmyong reports that the Go Kingdom is formally under the Divine Court. I tell him it is good work and ask whether the other 6 have made any noise. Thanks to my divine might, he says, none of them dare move, though the U Kingdom on our border is fortifying hard and clearly means to sit behind its walls. Then he asks whether we should bypass it for an easier target, or besiege it and trap them inside. I laugh at that. Holding the cities is a fine plan in an ordinary war, and these people have no idea what they are holding them against. Tak Wanmyong answers with something about my divine might, because he answers everything with something about my divine might. I tell him to leave half the army behind to administer the Go Kingdom, and to march the rest with me to the U Kingdom. 2 more days and we are outside their walls. Yuso looks down from the parapet at an army of 400,000 and cannot make it add up. He expected the enemy in full force, and instead they have brought less than half his million to a siege. He asks his ministers what the trick is, and the best anyone offers is that this might be a vanguard. None of them know that the Go Kingdom's army was not defeated by soldiers at all, or that most of the men in the field below used to be that army. With their gods standing behind them, nobody down there entertains a second thought. Yuso decides to watch and wait, since the whole thing could be bait to pull his million out into the open. Tak Wanmyong tells me we have arrived at the gates. I tell him to send a man forward first and give them a chance to repent, because anyone who surrenders keeps his life. I already know they will not take it, but you talk before you fight, and a god who skips that step looks impatient rather than merciful. Tak Wanmyong announces that his god is benevolent, then calls for a rider to proclaim our god's greatness, and offer them a chance to turn over a new leaf. The rider gallops to the wall and shouts it up at them. Our god is benevolent, he calls, and seeing the endless bloodshed inside the human race, he has descended in person to lead us into a new era. The Go Kingdom has already embraced our God, surrender sincerely to the divine court, and every past transgression is forgiven, because unification is inevitable and the divine court is bound by duty. On the wall, Yuso frowns and repeats the name. One minister says the divine court appears to be the unknown force, and another says calling themselves gods is pure arrogance. Yuso sneers that they knocked over one kingdom and now think highly of themselves, and he orders his men to ignore the shouting, since he would like to see how strong they really are. The rider gets no answer, stops shouting, and rides back, entirely at peace about it. His job was to deliver the offer. If these people will not respect his god, then when his god shows them divine might, it will be far too late for a conversation. I tell Tak Wanmyong to attack the city directly and not to worry about anybody getting hurt. He calls it a divine oracle and gives the order, and 400,000 men go at the wall like a tide coming in. Yuso actually laughs at us from the parapet, calling us ignorant and fearless. He is delighted we are stupid enough to assault a city at less than half his numbers, since once we reach the wall his archers can shoot at leisure. The sky fills with arrows. My army looks up, and knowing a god is watching does not stop a man from flinching under a few thousand falling shafts. I put my hand out and a golden phantom of a fortress comes up over them. The volley lands on it in a dense hammering rattle, and not one arrow gets through. My people start shouting about divine might and press forward harder. These men despaired when this power was pointed at them. Standing under it instead, they feel immortal, and a good number of them stop being soldiers and become fanatics. On the parapet, Yuso asks what that thing is and how it eats hundreds of thousands of arrows without a scratch. His ministers suggest the obvious that no method like this belongs to the human race, and that the divine court may genuinely have a god in it. Yuso refuses the conclusion and keeps the fact. Even a god's fortress must have a limit, he says, and once it shatters, his million men can kill whatever is behind it. He calls for fire arrows and catapults and tells them to commit everything once the enemy walks into range of the stones. The catapults come up. The arrows keep falling and keep failing, and my 400,000 walk to the base of the wall like men on a stroll. The boulders skate off the fortress the way the arrows did, and after the first serious impact, the gate shifts in its frame. They bring up a battering ram. Yuso panics from above and screams for boiling oil, and the oil comes down in sheets with torches after it, and the ground below the wall turns into a lake of fire. I watch this with my chin in my hand. They genuinely believe fire will be the answer to a god's protection. There never was a contest, and from the moment they decided to be my enemy, the ending was written. Yuso watches the flames roll off the fortress and get nowhere, and his face keeps getting worse. He asks himself whether divine power really is that absolute, then talks himself out of it, because he still has 1,000,000 men, and 1,000,000 men can kill a god. He orders the gates opened and the army out, since if range is useless, they will do it with hands. His soldiers pour straight into the enemy ranks, and watching them cross into the Phantom Fortress unharmed, Yuso actually smiles. Now he wants to see how 400,000 hold against 1,000,000. I stand up, because the squabbling ends here. All of these people are going to be mine to feed sooner or later, and I am not letting them kill each other over a wall. I tell the field that the new era of the human race has arrived. The voice I say it in comes down over the whole battlefield with a weight behind it that stops every man where he stands. Then I cross the distance in a single step, and stand under the wall a few breaths later. I tell them to retreat, and the word goes into their souls rather than their ears, so 1,000,000 men lose their footing and step aside without deciding to. I rise into the air above them. In ancient times, I tell them, I took the incarnation of a sage to lead you, and the human race walked out of barbarism towards civilization. War brings a great deal, I say, and takes more, and today I have come down as a god again. The crowd below breaks into cheering and praise. Yuso's face is a ruin, and his ministers have stopped speaking, since the rhythm of the whole scene belongs to me now. Tak Wonmyung throws himself into the moment with his usual restraint. He calls on them to believe in the Lord who led the race in ancient days, and to merge and unify in obedience to the divine oracle. Others take it up around him, about the sage of the past being the Lord's incarnation. Then one voice cuts across all of it. Yuso calls it impossible and delusional, says his kingdom is not something anybody may covet, and shouts that gods and sages are fabrications invented to fool the public. He orders his men to kill us all. His ministers stare at him in open astonishment, and then, one by one, they move away from him, so as not to be standing near him when the sky answers. I frown up there. This is the part where you make an example of exactly one man so the rest never need convincing. I tell him that insulting the sage is a capital matter, and I look at him. His hand pulls the sword from his own waist without asking him. In front of his entire court and his entire army, that hand lifts the blade and lays it against his throat. He is saying stop, over and over, his pupils shrinking to points as the fear finally arrives, and none of his words reach the arm doing the work. The blood goes out 3 feet, and his body tips off the wall and falls the whole way down. After watching that, not one man on the wall or in the field can find the will to lift a weapon, and they give them up in ones and twos until there are none left. In the entire battle for the Yu Kingdom, exactly one person died, and it was the monarch of the Yu Kingdom. That was the fall of the Yu Kingdom. That was the fall of the Yu Kingdom. What follows a conquest is mostly paperwork. Tak Wonmyung folds the surviving Yu Kingdom army into hours inside a week. The royal bloodline watch from their own wall what a god does to a city, and they offer up their wrists without an argument. I spare their lives and send them into penal labor, because a man swinging a hammer on the foundations of the human race contributes more than a corpse in a ditch. I may be a god on this rock now, but I still count costs like a man who has been broke. While the army settles into governing, I open the system mission. The chime lands once, and the panel reads itself back to me flatly. The objective is to annihilate the 7 kingdoms and establish a new era for the human race. Completion stands at 2 of 7, and the reward is 300,000 system points in 1 silver draw. 2 kingdoms in a handful of days is a decent pace, and I do not think the remaining 5 will take long. I want it faster anyway, since my seal keeps peeling itself back and my strength has climbed to 5/10,000ths of what it should be. The day after the Yu Kingdom dies, the news reaches the other 5 courts. They verify it twice, then go very quiet. The Yu Kingdom ranked 3rd among the 7 by raw strength, and it was gutted inside a single afternoon. They had already guessed the grain strategy, the plan to sit behind walls and let a besieger starve. 1,000,000 men and an unbreakable city could not hold that gate for 1 day, and every court understands what the arithmetic means. On the 3rd day, the Yu Kingdom is fully ours, and the army moves again. On the 4th, we reach the gates of the Ro Kingdom, and the battle lasts less than a few quarters of an hour before I flatten the place myself. My power grows every day now. Enough that keeping several million people pressed flat is no longer a question. One more day to take control, and then I am walking toward the last 4. Those 4 are terrified, and terror makes them sociable. Letters cross borders, and every soldier the 4 courts own is dragged to the Jin Kingdom to stand in one enormous heap. Ants are still ants when they huddle together for warmth. On the 6th day, I arrive under the walls of the Jin Kingdom's capital, and the field ahead of me is several million men deep. The monarchs shout orders from the ramparts while the war drums roll hard enough to shake the sky. Looking at it moves me more than I expect, so I recite a poem into the wind. Dark clouds press upon the city and threaten to crush it, and armor glints in the sun like scales opening in gold. Horns sound through the whole autumn sky, and the rouge along the border congeals into the purple of night. Half-furled red banners face the Yoke River, and heavy frost on the cold drums lets no sound rise. Tak Wanmyeong calls it exquisite and swears it will be passed down 10,000 generations. I wave him off, because I did not write that poem. I only remembered it, and it happened to fit the weather. All 4 courts have gathered themselves into one place, which spares me the work of hunting them one at a time. I tell the army to wait for my return, and they answer with the formula about the divine decree and hold their ground. Then I step forward and the earth drops out from under my feet. The scouts on the wall report a single figure approaching, then report that the figure is already in front of their army, then that the figure is walking on air. The 4 kings see me before the next runner reaches the stairs. I let the name of the thing carry across the whole field. Eye of sinful punishment. Judgment. A golden eye opens slowly above every head down there, and several million faces go slack in the same instant. Then they are simply gone from where they were standing. When they come back to themselves, they are lashed to crosses. Several million crosses planted across the wilderness, their friends fixed in the same posture beside them. The 4 monarchs are pinned to their own city wall. The Jin Kingdom's king is out of his mind with fear, and the other 3 have gone the color of wet paper. The rest is bookkeeping. I behead the 4 monarchs, hand the Jin Kingdom to the army, and send detachments to take the other 3 capitals. The 7 kingdoms are finished, and the divine court stands where 7 courts used to argue with each other. When no chime comes, I ask my system why the mission has not closed, since I did exactly what it asked. It answers in that flat, faintly bored way it has. I have only annihilated the 7 kingdoms and have not re-established a new system for the human race. And the mission completes when both conditions hold at once. Fine. Building a system is the easy half of the job. The year that follows erases the borders. The 7 kingdoms were abolished, and their lands merged, and nothing was left standing at the center of the continent except the divine court. I raised the cathedral out of divine power myself, a full 100 meters of it, and wind and rain will never wear it down. There is a thread of divinity in the stone, and it thickens as the centuries stack up. In that same stretch, my seal peeled back to my talent limit, 1% of my full power. A second year went by, and most of the human race drifted into belief, which locked my rule down tighter than any garrison could. There are costs to ruling a species that prays at you. From where a god of creation is sitting, the ledger still comes out well ahead. Then I abolish the game and calendar and announce that the human race is entering a new era, and Divine Revelation Year 1 begins. In Divine Revelation Year 1, I drove them at productivity until the first real growth in their technology showed up. In Divine Revelation Year 10, they reached the steam age, and the technology revolution opened, steam engines and electric motors arriving one after another. Machines took over work that no number of arms could finish. In Divine Revelation Year 50, natural phenomena kept surfacing under my deliberate hints, and inventions came in a line, and industrial civilization settled over them. Electromagnetic induction was discovered and put to work, and direct current and alternating current appeared in turn. I issued a divine decree that threw the weight of the whole race behind physics, mathematics, biology, and chemistry. Under that push, the physics system was built at speed, and mathematics ran from its budding period through constant quantities into variables until calculus stood on its own legs. The two pulled each other along. In Divine Revelation Year 100, mathematics reached the modern period and went straight on into the contemporary one. In Divine Revelation Year 120, the human race entered the electrical age and began turning out weapons in volume, and under my rule not one of those weapons was ever pointed inward. The new era was established, exactly as ordered. The chime lands before I have finished admiring it. The mission is complete, and the panel congratulates me on 300,000 system points and 1 silver draw. I am already back outside the world when it arrives. 100 years of me steering them, and the civilization skipped straight over agricultural and industrial and landed in modern. In raw civilization level, they are not behind the world I was born in. The one whole is entertainment, which barely exists among them. I do not care. I did not build a species so it could relax on weekends. I built it to meet other civilizations someday with real weapons in its hands, so every skill point goes into technology. The problem is what comes next. Without a major breakthrough, the human race slows down, because I have only witnessed so much myself, and have nothing left to teach them. I want to open a second system for them and have no means of doing it. They already live under divine rule and have seen the mystic side work, so if a new system ever falls into my hands, they can carry magic and technology together. A cultivation system would be better still. In a world with cultivation in it, I would be the world will myself, and the thought alone puts me in a good mood. Then a voice that is not my system cuts across all of it, colder, with no opinion anywhere in it. The civilization under this Star-Lord has entered the information age. Disaster is brewing, and the Star-Lord is asked to prepare. That is fast, and something about it sits wrong. I reached the information age once before. In a run I would rather not revisit, and the disaster came for me then too. That civilization spent many years inside the information age before anything arrived, and it still did not survive. The one coming now is going to be worse. My system says as much, telling me to prepare early, because the difficulty of a disaster a Star-Lord actively triggers is not the difficulty of one he waits passively to receive. Yiwu keeps the rest of the guests to himself. The last civilization crawled into the information age across a long, slow climb, and this one vaulted there inside a century, and the rules always charge extra for speed. I tell the system it is right, and that this one will be extraordinary. I have already paid once for underestimating a disaster, so this time everything I own goes into it. The chime opens again and a system mission drops on top of the warning. The objective is civilization survival under this disaster, and the rewards are issued against the survival rate. The panel runs the ladder up in one breath. 90 to 100% pays 1 million system points and a gold draw. 80 to 89 pays 600,000 and a gold draw. 60 to 79 pays 400,000. And 3 silver draws. 30 to 59 pays 100,000, and 1 silver draw, and anything under 30 pays nothing at all. I stare at that ladder like a man handed a menu with no prices on it. My system, helpful as ever, reminds me that the more generous a mission's rewards are, the higher the danger riding under them. Rewards on this scale mean the disaster itself is very special, and if I handle it badly, the civilization may simply be annihilated. Yiwu had not expected the rules to bite on that one. He released the mission as a casual experiment. A hook thrown in the water, and the rules recognized it and priced it like something they already knew was coming. I tell the system to convert all 300,000 system points into silver draws and burn all 4 right now. I had been hoarding toward 1 million and a gold draw. Hoarding is for men who are confident about being alive next year. The first draw comes up a B-grade talent called Suitable Climate. B-grade. I have been at this long enough to know exactly how disappointed I am supposed to be at this stage of the process, so I wait. The second chime lands on top of it. Tenfold amplification fires, and Suitable Climate evolves into the A-grade talent Good Weather. Good weather softens natural disasters across my subordinate civilization, keeps the atmosphere agreeable to live in, and raises grain yield across the planet. The remaining draws hand me an A-grade item, a technology development card, and then 2 more of the same. The chime comes for those as well, and all 3 walk out of the amplification at S-grade. Used on a civilization that already has science, the card runs technology development at 10 times speed for 50 years. That haul leaves me underwhelmed. Without my system, these rewards would be genuinely unwatchable. Even at S-grade, a 10-fold multiplier does very little for me right now, because the human race's technology curve has gone flat, and 10 times a crawl is still a crawl. Then the system points out that I am holding 3 items of the same type. Identical items can be fused, each type only once, and a successful fusion produces something stronger. The success rate is 50%, and on a failure, everything I put in is destroyed. It asks whether I want to fuse. My face lights up, because that technology development card was doing nothing for me anyway. I tell it to fuse. The panel asks me to wait, and for a few seconds I sit with my chest tight like a man watching a coin come down. The fusion succeeds, and hands me an S+ grade item. Then the second chime arrives. Tenfold amplification fires on top of the fusion, and the S+ grade item evolves into a double S grade item, the technological explosion card. What kind of system do I have that it amplifies the results of its own amplification? 3 silver draws and a coin flip just bought me a double S grade item. The card's effect reads simply enough. Used on the civilization under this Star-Lord, technology development enters exponential explosive growth, and it holds that curve for 300 years. I pull the full readout before I spend anything. The readout opens with my own name in the host field, Gang Biome, and puts my level under it, Level 2 Star-Lord. My bound planet is Earth Star, listed now as a Level 3 planet. My talents run Rich Star at A grade, Civilization Evolution at A grade, Greed at S grade, Divine Advent at S grade, and Good Weather at A grade. My subordinate civilization is the human race in the information age, and the civilization level reads 0.7. The system functions are plunder, all things amplification at 10 times, and alternate world summoning, with system points sitting at 0. It closes the way it always closes, on the system evaluation, informing me that I am the worst host it has ever had, and asking me to please become stronger as soon as possible. Under Rich Star, the barren rock I inherited has become a level 3 planet whose volume alone is 10 times what it was. I have a feeling about this cycle. If the civilization crosses into level 1, I go up to level 3 Star-Lord with it. I use the technological explosion card, and the panel confirms 300 years of Earth star time in which technology comes apart at the seams. Even with that in the ground, I do not feel safe, so I decide to go down into the world myself. Not to fight for them, only to be within reach if the whole thing starts coming apart. The statue in the divine court flares, while Tak Wan Myung is halfway through a prayer, and he asks carefully whether it is his lord. I tell him the human race is about to face a great crisis, that the preparation must be total, and that he is to arm every last one of them. It is Divine Revelation year 121, 1 year since I came back out, and the man kneeling under that statue should have been in the ground for decades. That is my doing. I pushed divine power into his vitality and bought him 300 years, which is the ceiling of the human race's gene lock. Past that ceiling, a man has to break the lock itself, and the fastest way is contact with transcendent power, which their system does not have. He swears they will obey the oracle. Then I tell him that during this crisis I will incarnate and walk into the world in person, and the composure goes out of him all at once. He asks whether the believers should come out and welcome me. There is no need, I tell him. I will observe from the dark, which is also a test of how they handle themselves, and they had better not disappoint me. What I actually mean is that they can stand at the front and find out whether the water is deep. If nothing eats them, I will come in. He answers that the believers will not send their Lord away disappointed, and that if they fail, he will apologize with his death. I do not respond to that. I pull my consciousness out and let the statue go dark. He stays kneeling a long time afterward, looking up at dead stone. A calamity big enough to make a god warn them personally is not a small one. If his people handle it well, there may be favor in it. Maybe another stretch of life. If they handle it badly, he has already named his own price. Getting down there costs more than I expect. When I price a time flow of 1 day outside for every 100 years on Earth star, the creation points required make me hiss. I redefine it at 10 years inside per day outside, which lands inside what I am willing to spend. With the S-grade talent greed feeding on the civilization's development, the return covers the bill and leaves change. I pick a remote spot and turn off the special effects my talents drag along behind them. Leaving them on would be like nailing up a sign in an empty field announcing that no silver is buried here. Please do not dig. I come down inside a plain little house, change my face, and use the Star-Lord's power over rules to build myself an identity. Everything outside looks like the world I grew up in, because a modern civilization is a modern civilization anywhere. The place turns out to be a small town. I spend the day editing my neighbors' memories, and by evening, every one of them is certain I am a university student who moved in 3 years ago and writes novels at home. The next morning, I put 100 million won on my card at the bank as pocket money. Lying on a sofa in front of a television, with no meetings and no rent to worry about, I decide I have earned this. A year goes by like that. The human race's technology comes apart at the seams exactly as advertised, and I know my double S-grade card has taken hold. Then the news anchor tells the country that controllable nuclear fusion has been mastered and that humanity is entering an era of infinite energy. He thanks the Lord for it and prays on air, and everyone watching prays along. I sit up on the sofa, surprised at how fast that card works. In the second year, the epoch-making products stop being occasional. Dark matter applications arrive, antimatter weapons are unveiled, and then human beings build a real artificial intelligence. Not the barely functional kind that used to answer my questions in my old life. Then a researcher goes on television to talk about the dark matter nuclear bomb. He explains that one of them is enough to level 378,000 square kilometers, and that the blast is not even the real damage. The dark matter inside keeps compressing and collapsing after detonation, until it pulls on dark matter at the macroscopic scale. Dark matter is 85% of the mass of the universe, so a periodic attraction and collapse cannot end anywhere except in a miniature black hole. The project is in its final stage. Then he adds warmly that this weapon's power is less than 1/1000th of our Lord's. I stop chewing my fried chicken, and my mouth twitches. Less than 1/1000th of mine. I would sincerely like to know when I became that strong, because nobody sent me the notice. I had underestimated technology. Taken far enough down its own road, the thing might genuinely be able to kill a god. My own strength keeps climbing across these years too, and the step up to level 3 Star-Lord is close enough to touch. In Divine Revelation year 125, the dark matter nuclear bomb was finished, and there was nowhere on the planet safe enough to test it, so the detonation plan was shelved. The research kept eating money anyway, all of it overseen by Tak Wan Myung, who held that if their lord had promised calamities, then a full arsenal was the only guarantee any of them had. In Divine Revelation year 126, Earthstar officially became a level 1 civilization, and I officially became a level 3 Star Lord. I am still inside Earthstar and still throttled to 1% of my peak. Even so, I could take 100 copies of the man I was last week and not work up a sweat. Then the cold voice comes back, the bureaucratic one with no snark in it, and it does not congratulate me. It states that the Star-Lord civilization has entered level 1 civilization, and that due to special circumstances the calamity has been changed. The difficulty is being stacked together with the civilization advancement assessment. The calamity is cancelled, and the civilization test begins. The assessment mission is changed, and the difficulty is increased again. I go from ecstatic to rigid inside one breath. They can do that. Apparently they can do that. Now Ye Wu understands the reward ladder. The rules priced that mission the way they did because they already knew what they were about to stack on top of it. The voice continues. The assessment mission is confirmed. The difficulty is double S grade, and the objective is to resist invasion by another Star-Lord's level 1 civilization. So I am no longer fighting a storm. I am fighting somebody, another civilization at level 1, very likely one that has been sitting at level 1 for a long time while I crossed the line yesterday afternoon. The voice lays the rest of it out without hurrying. In 1 year, the World Connection channel opens, and random world gates will appear across my Star-Lord civilization, through which the opponent may enter. The assessment cycle runs 100 years. The rules bind both civilization worlds equally. Both time flows are synchronized, and 100 years inside is 1 day outside. If the Star-Lord survives the cycle and the civilization is not destroyed, the assessment is passed, and the civilization's survival rate is then judged for scoring. I take a long breath. The rules are set, and no amount of complaining moves them. Contending with another civilization means hiding well. Because once the assessment starts, I cannot leave. The civilization can burn and I can start over from a barren rock. If I die, there is nothing left to start over with. The idol lights and Tak Wan Myung comes in at a run, begging forgiveness for being late. I tell him it is fine, because I know he was acting on my command, and I hear the breath go out of him. Then I tell him I have perceived the timing of the calamity through great divine power. In 1 year, world gates will open at random across Earthstar, and Earthstar will face invasion by civilizations from another world. The opponent is not weak. They will prepare for battle, and they will not disappoint me. He tells me the enemy will come and never return, and that anyone who covets his Lord's world should be prepared to lose his own. There is real murder in the way he says it, so I offer him the thing I have been holding. If he truly leads the human race to destroy the opponent's world, then I will bestow what I promised, the method of immortality. His face goes incandescent. It does not occur to him for 1 second that I might be dangling false hope, because a god would not lie, and would not lower himself to lie. I clear my throat, tell him to get to work, and get out of there. The whole race arms itself. The next day the broadcast carries nothing else. An anchor tells the country that a divine oracle has come, and that other civilizations will invade this world within the year. Then asks the crowd what they intend to do. The crowd answers by demanding blood, and the anger runs across the entire human race in a day. They enlist voluntarily in numbers nobody has to manage. The researchers who will never see a battlefield work day and night instead, on the grounds that the weapons in everyone else's hands are their contribution. Under the double S grade card, technology explodes again inside that single year. In Divine Revelation year 127, the invasion begins, and enormous world gates open all over the planet. The human race, ready for months, dispatches troops the same hour. Green monsters pour out of the gates in a flood, and one of them laughs at what he sees. Boris asks whether this is really the world they are invading, calls it far too weak, and says he could kill the whole thing with a gentle poke of one finger. Bruce tells him not to be careless, because their god named this a level 1 civilization, and because this is only their second invasion. If Barris ruins it the way he ruined the last world, Bruce says, their god's mercy will not save him from Bruce. Barris complains that nobody could have guessed the last world was holding a trump card, a dignified god of creation hiding in the shadows, to ambush them. Only their own god catching it in time and wounding the thing badly saved them all. Gods differ from gods, he sneers, and that one was a rat in a gutter rather than a deity. Then the horn goes up and the Green Army charges. I watch it through my own satellites, the same feed running on the wall of the war room. Tak Wan Myung studies the things and remarks that this must be the other world civilization his lord named, and that their appearance is genuinely ugly. One of his officers points at the weapons and asks whether the front rank is cannon fodder, since they are charging with wooden sticks and hammers. Tak Wan Myung tells him not to be careless. If the weapons are that crude, then their mystic power is what carries them up to level 1, and the sensible first move is to find every world gate and give it a nuclear baptism. The word nuclear goes through the room like a dropped plate. They push back on him carefully. Nuclear weapons do great harm, and although the population was evacuated long ago, some of those gates opened on land people live on. Land baptized in nuclear fire stays contaminated and unfit to live on. Tak Wonmyong tells them they do not understand. It is a little radiation, and with the Lord here the land can be purified in minutes. While they are at it, the buildings should all be replaced too, because the current ones are rustic. Everyone agrees with him fervently, since in their view their Lord is omnipotent. I am being volunteered for a continent-wide cleanup and an architecture project by a man who has never once asked me first. Every world gate on Earth Star is locked. 2 nuclear weapons minimum for each of them, 5 for the large ones. It is a probe. They want to know whether the other side can eat a nuclear weapon and keep walking. On the far side, Bruce roars for everyone to stop. A sense of lethal crisis keeps rising in him, and when Barris asks what is wrong, he says the enemy has attacked and his talent is predicting his own death. Barris stares at him, because Bruce can block even supreme magic, exactly once. Then he sees 5 dark, shining iron barrels coming down out of the sky with the death sense riding on them. He screams at everyone to defend, and throws up the only defensive supreme magic he owns. A green shield closes over Bruce and Barris, and he has nothing to spare for any other goblin there. He shouts at Barris to use his talent, and Barris comes back to himself, his bones tearing out through his own body into a pair of wings over them both. The first weapon lands. The heat vaporizes the low-level goblins where they stand, and the high-level ones last a moment longer before they go to ash. A mushroom cloud stands up over Earth Star. When it thins, Bruce and Barris are both bringing up blood, both broken open, both somehow alive. An army of millions has been reduced to its 2 chiefs in less time than it takes to shout. Then more iron barrels come down, and Bruce smiles at them and says his god will destroy these people. 4 more clouds go up. In the war room, the clouds keep standing on the surveillance wall, and Tak Wonmyong sees the shield Bruce threw before he died under it. The officers are badly shaken. Cannon fodder that can hold off nuclear weapons means a main force that will not even flinch at a hydrogen bomb. Tak Wonmyong names it out loud, the mystic side, and observes that the enemy was unafraid because nuclear fire is not a trump card to them, only an ordinary method. The report comes in that every Vanguard team has been annihilated, and he orders them to hold and watch for the main charge. In the other world, the reports arrive differently. Ollier hears that Lord Bruce and Lord Barris have both fallen, and the entire Vanguard has been shattered, and his green face pulls tight around the fangs. His man tells him their forces were hit on entry by an all-round super-tier magic attack, flattening 100 kilometers around every impact point. Ollier's eyes go wide, because they divided into over 100 attack points, which means hundreds of super-tier spells released in a single instant. Asked whether the attack should continue, he says it continues. 2 chiefs died. The goblin race lacks everything in this world except numbers, and the females taken from the last world will keep producing bricks and tiles for the army. His reading is that the enemy emptied itself in the first strike to frighten them into stopping. Super-tier magic is enormously expensive, so the other side has perhaps 2 more in them, and 2 more waves will drain that well dry. Tak Wonmyong watches the tide come back toward the gates, and is asked whether to continue the nuclear baptism. He works it out in front of them. The other side certainly knows what happened to the first wave, and charging anyway confirms the earlier read. All of it is fodder, and the purpose is to make the human race spend nuclear weapons faster than it can build them. He smiles, because a handful of barbarians are trying to bleed a production line that used to be a bottleneck, and is not one anymore. The button goes down again, the sky fills with them, and for a while every sound on the continent is swallowed by mushroom clouds. The goblins keep sending people forward into it regardless. After 2 more waves, Earth Star is scarred to the bone, and both sides stop. The monitoring room takes that badly. This was their homeland, and it looks like slag now. Tak Wonmyong asks what exactly they are panicking about, since with the Lord here everything can be restored to what it was. All of this evil came out of the other side's world, an ugly civilization that walked into their home and ran wild in it. The moment they have measured the enemy's real strength, they will go through and turn that world upside down. The room straightens up. Then he tells them the enemy stopping means the fodder achieved its purpose. A general offensive is coming soon, and it will be full of things that can each survive a nuclear weapon alone. They still have plenty of nuclear weapons. Against an army where every soldier shrugs one off, plenty stops meaning much, and the room knows it. So Tak Wonmyong reminds them, pleasantly, that the dark matter nuclear bomb has never actually been tested. Someone objects that Earth Star can survive nuclear weapons but cannot survive the miniature black hole a dark matter collapse produces. He glares at the man and calls him stupid, because he never said anything about detonating it on Earth Star. The world behind that gate belongs to the enemy. If they can come through it, so can a bomb, and while nobody here gets to watch the result, making the other side suffer is result enough. They own 10 of them. He decides to spend 2. The 2 largest gates are locked. The skylights of 2 military bases grind open, and 2 enormous objects climb out and follow their trajectories down into the gates. A goblin coming the other way is shoved backward by the thrust, and the bomb goes through with him. Ollier's sixth sense screams at him. He has mastered god-level magic himself, and he reads the power of the incoming thing at a glance, and calls it a god-tier strike. He could escape it and his clansmen could not, so he prays instead. The sky opens with endless divine light as a vast figure comes down over the field and lays a blessing across it. The bomb strikes the golden barrier, the impact meets the detonation conditions, and countless fission and fusion reactions run inside the casing. The barrier holds and keeps all of it outside, but the temperature and pressure at the center of that explosion start the dark matter collapsing. The dark matter around it is drawn in, aggregated and compressed until it passes a limit, and a miniature black hole is born out of the fall. Even the light nearby cannot climb back out of it. The enemy Star-Lord's expression changes when he sees it. The golden barrier that stood through the blast begins to buckle inward under the pull. Matter feeds into the hole and the thing swells and is crushed smaller again, and the planet under it starts to crack and shake. Goblins are dragged off their feet with no power to resist and drawn out into strings of particles. Olier watches with a blank face, unable to understand a power that exceeds god-level magic this badly. Then the second explosion arrives on the far side of the planet, and a second black hole opens there, in the one place their god is not standing. That hemisphere becomes hell. Every goblin on it fights, super tier and god tier magic pouring into the hole in an unbroken stream, and all of it is swallowed and turned into food. The fed thing shudders where it hangs. A miniature black hole cannot last. Its density has to stay infinite, so its volume keeps shrinking while its mass climbs. And the moment the volume can no longer sustain it, the thing detonates. The gravity of that detonation breeds pairs of positive and negative particles, and their annihilation releases enough energy to erase any matter it touches. The enemy Star-Lord knows the arithmetic as well as any physicist on Earth's star. He can survive the explosion of a miniature black hole. The planet holding his entire civilization cannot. He curses out loud, a Star-Lord who has invaded two worlds, watching his own civilization about to end in a war that has barely started. His civilization had climbed too fast once. The disaster test and the assessment for advancing to level 1 landed on top of each other, and triggered the civilization invasion war. The civilization thrown at him then was a human magic civilization, and only the terrifying reproduction of the goblin carried him through that 100-year cycle. The second time he went looking for it, taking part in another civilization invasion war by choice, and picked a human magic civilization that had only just crossed into level 1. Their magic was shallower, their breeding slower, their bodies softer than a goblin's. After one suicide charge, their civilization was gone, and their women were carried home as fresh bricks and mortar for the army. He spent several hundred years rebuilding his numbers before launching this one. He cannot accept it, so he gambles, trading a severe injury for the chance that anything of his survives, and orders every believer to unleash forbidden magic. They answer that they obey and will be saved in the light, and that they will smash every obstacle on the path of conquest. Though their souls fall into hell and their bodies scatter into dust, they will follow in his footsteps. Every goblin on the planet goes down on its knees in devotion, and an enormous weight of faith begins to converge. He tells them to chant the forbidden curse. A low sound erupts across the whole world at once, like demons weeping and a reaper muttering under his breath. The goblins feel their own souls pulled and torn, and they hold the words anyway. A power of rules comes down. He gathers it into himself. The destiny lines of every goblin alive braided together, and their soul power devoured to feed it. As the carrier of that energy, he is not spared either, and the rules erode his divine body, while his power keeps falling. A cold light crosses his eyes, and he speaks the name of the thing, Order Lock, nothingness. The rule power erupts. Order comes down across the planet and erases both black holes exactly as he wills it, erased in the true sense, gone without a trace, leaving nothing behind but the ruined skin of the world. Then the backlash finds him, because not even a divine body hosts the destruction of order for free. Golden divine blood spills onto the ground, and everywhere it lands flowers and grasses come up thick and fast. Olier says his name with open worry. The Star-Lord waves it off as a necessary backlash. He refuses to let pain show in front of a subordinate, because a god with no dignity has nothing left, and he presses the injuries down under divine power. He had not expected a technology civilization. A low-level one would have been nothing to him. Once technology passes a certain line, even gods learn to be afraid of it, and he has just watched the demonstration. He could have stood in that blast without a scratch, and his civilization could not, and erasing it by order cost more than he can afford to spend twice. The entire goblin civilization is carrying soul damage now, the weak ones reduced to idiots, the strong ones knocked backward in cultivation. The only question that matters is whether the enemy can throw more of those, or whether those two were everything they had. He cannot let the other side learn how badly he is hurt. He tells Olier to lead the believers and keep charging, to keep the enemy out of this world and keep them from measuring what is left of it. His plan is simply to outlast the 100 years on goblin numbers. Plunder is no longer anywhere in his thinking, since his own base is nearly gone. All he wants is the cycle over so he can run, because once the gate closes, the enemy cannot reach him at all. Olie hesitates. Most of the believers are severely injured, and sending them out now is sending them to die for nothing. The Star-Lord looks at him without interest and says that necessary sacrifices are unavoidable when a civilization's survival is at stake. After death, he says, their souls will enter his divine kingdom and live there forever. Olie accepts the order bitterly. They were the ones who started the plunder, and now they are spending their own people by the 100,000 just to stay breathing. Then the Star-Lord goes to find somewhere to hide and heal, where the enemy Star-Lord will not find him. Nobody in the command center knows any of that. All they see is goblins pouring out of the gates again, and somebody asks whether the other side blocked the dark matter nuclear bomb that easily. Tak Wan Myong does not answer. He watches, then orders the image enlarged, because something about these armies is strange. On the wall, a goblin bares its teeth and claws, green face full of ferocity, not one visible injury anywhere on its body, and its expression says it has been hurt badly. He tells them the other side cannot have taken that weapon without cost. They blocked it with some method nobody here knows, and it hurt them. Then he orders big data monitoring run across every goblin on the feed. The artificial intelligence goes to work and scans tens of thousands of figures. In moments, the count comes back at 4,763,211 monsters, every one of them unmarked on the outside and every one of them in visible pain. From that, the machine infers brain trauma across the entire enemy army, and it reports the inference in the same flat voice it uses for everything else. Tak Wan Myong laughs quietly at his own screen. One goblin in pain is a coincidence, and two is bad luck, and all of them at once is a confession. His read is that the enemy used some forbidden technique to block the strike, and that the backlash of it wrecked them. Shoving a wounded army straight back out is theater meant to keep the human race still while the moment is open. The room catches up all at once, and someone asks whether they should invade. Of course they should, he says. The advantage belongs to them, and it is time the other side saw what the human race actually is. He orders another nuclear baptism to clear the field, then the mechanical legion through the gates to find out what the enemy's world looks like from the inside. On the battlefield, the goblin army stares up at the incoming weapon and kneels in place, because word has gone through the ranks that this thing cannot be blocked. Olier has put several chiefs at every attack point this time. The chiefs chant and raise super tier magic, and the arrays bloom into light over the army. The first weapon cracks the barrier. The second shatters it. They overdraw their own life force to raise it again and endure. Two more before the chiefs go down on their knees, completely spent. All beings are equal under a nuclear weapon. When the dust settles, there is nothing on that field except ash. Then the mechanical legions arrive, and the goblins trying to retake the ground meet artillery the moment they step out of a gate. Hundreds of millions of machines pour through in the other direction, and the goblin army loses control of the gates entirely. Once they are through, the machines drop every restriction and go to indiscriminate strike mode. Lasers sweep and artillery falls without pause. The goblins answer with magic, but nothing on the other side is flesh and blood, and a machine with half its body gone keeps firing. After several days and nights, the goblins are frightened of them. These things never tire, and while a goblin has to stop and replenish magic power, the mechanical army attacks around the clock. They retreat and keep retreating, losing vast stretches of land while more legions walk out of the gate behind them, until their planet is occupied wholesale.